chance to issue a call to reason. Let no human deny the perils of our time. While we battle one another, divided by the petty strife of our common history, the tide of a greater conflict is turning against us, threatening to destroy all that we have accomplished. It is time for us as nations and as individuals to set aside our long-standing feuds and unite. The tides of an unwinnable war are upon us, and we must seek refuge upon higher ground lest we be swept away by the flood. The Confederacy is no more. Whatever semblance of unity and protection it once provided is a phantom, a memory. With our enemies left unchecked, who will you turn to for protection? The devastation wrought by the alien invaders is self-evident. We have seen our homes and communities destroyed by the calculated blows of the Protoss. We have seen firsthand our friends and loved ones consumed by the nightmare Zerg. Unprecedented and unimaginable though they may be, these are the signs of our time. The time has come, my fellow Terrans, to rally to a new banner. In unity lies strength. Already many of the dissident factions have joined us. Out of the many, we shall forge an indivisible whole, capitulating only to a single throne. And from that throne, I shall watch over you. From this day forward, let no human make war upon any other human. Let no Terran agency conspire against this new beginning, and let no man consort with alien powers. And to all the enemies of humanity, seek not to bar our way, for we shall win through, no matter the cost.
Hello. Welcome to the Ask Me Anything stream. This is not an official podcast. I just wanted to kind of take some time to do a stream answering questions, going over events. That was the intro. Well, it was actually the video from StarCraft, a classic game from the 1990s, where it ends with the villain declaring that he's king of the human race, essentially. And it's supposed to be ironic. It's supposed to be like a propaganda video, like Paul Vanderhoeven's Starship Troopers, but it's just one of the most compelling cases for monarchy ever put. Like in recent memory, you're looking at the villain crown himself king, and you're like, hey, he's got kind of a point. Yeah. So the story behind this live stream is I haven't prepared anything. More or less, I'm trying to get down to doing live streams every other week. So 2 live streams a month. And I had to miss last week. And so this is the makeup live stream for the one that I missed last week organically. So we're just going to do an Ask Me Anything. And hopefully I'll think of some better use of airtime next week. Obviously, I think the entropy link is up. Okay, people are actually able to donate. People say they're having some hard time with that. In the meantime, we're just going to be talking about events. Every time I do one of these things, I put questions to people on Twitter about subjects, and they always ask me like questions that aren't very good for live streaming, like, oh, what's the moral basis of distributism? Catholicism, obviously. Like yes or no questions. Do you like Star Wars? No. Question answered. I can't like riff on that topic at all. But organically, I mean, what's going on in the news right now? That the most relevant thing that's gone on in the news for the last month has been the death of Charlie Kirk and the fallout from that, which is just, as far as discourse goes, as far as political dialectics goes, that is going to be the story of 2025. There's just no getting around it. I've totally lost the ability to connect to progressives either in real life or online. I've said this last time. I've just Been going through my list, blocking, Matt McManus block, Ben Burgess block. I think Nathan Robinson, that guy that has the stupid Eugene Debs get up. I can't stand these people. It's painful to watch because it's either psychotic or incredibly insincere. And I don't know. I mean, I can't even do my usual. Oh, discourse is dead. Discourse is dead. Everyone knows it's dead right now, and everyone is kind of sitting in their own camps and trying to decide what to do with the post-discourse age. And I guess, politics is still going on, obviously. Politics doesn't require discourse. All it requires is a struggle for power. And so we're still aware that there are issues that need to be discussed. But I don't know. It's just there's nothing really to like push forward. Uh, obviously there's sort of this mini war going on between Trump and Antifa that is a little interesting to watch on the sides. It's interesting because we're getting like these really, really strange clips from Portland and San Francisco and other progressive epicenters that have Antifa cells. The Trumpers, I think really it's mainly Chicago and Portland. But Trump is sending the National Guard into these locations, and the again, it's like the left has this playbook where it's like, we're going to do insurrection theater, we're going to do protest theater, we're going to pretend like we're fighting the cops, and it just lets you get a look at what the left is. I mean, first of all, it's completely fake, and maybe I should just address this right up front. I kind of had entitled this non-podcast, this Ask Me Anything, Plan Always Beats Chimp, because I think, and this is a argument between myself and the other people in the dissident right, I think that the victory in 2024 really is giving the right wing a lot of bad habits here. It's really, I mean, like, I'm not, populist power has its place in the world. Like, it is a thing that you can do. But the victory in 2024 and the fact that for the first time in forever, the right is actually using a modicum of power as opposed to just kind of posing in office and having a theater of power. Because of that, there is this idea that the main thing we can do is chimp out. And so I feel like I've been hearing a lot of really bad advice. So, I mean, for people who aren't as internet savvy or as aware of the online lingo, chimp out it's really odd because chimp out was this expression that came up. I first remember hearing about the chimp out when I think it was 2014, and this was the first. I mean, their Black Lives Matter had already been a thing with the Trayvon Martin shooting, but now it was Michael Brown, and there was this new upswell of like this activism and protesting that turned violent and whatever. Of course, it was always just right in time for one election or the other, as it absolutely had to be. There had to be one of these eruptions. And of course, 4chan being what it was, they called these explosions of exuberant violence, they called them chimp outs, as named after the famously peaceful primate that was well documented by the recently passed away zoologist Jane Goodall. But as we all know, the chimpanzee is not the most peaceful animal. He's not even the most peaceful animal of the apes that are most directly related to us. I don't know, in the chimpanzee family. I don't know how you do the designations, but there's another near chimp animal called the bonobo, which is much less exuberantly violent. And so therefore, to make the meme totally racist, these explosions of urban extremist exuberance were called chimp outs. And this is before Antifa really became a thing with the election of Trump. So it was mainly used to describe protests that were comprised largely of non-white people. And then, after chimping out became a pejorative, became something, chimping out insofar as it was applied to your friends, You say, oh, like he's chimping out. It would be sort of the same thing as saying he or she is crashing out. It was used in the exact same way. If someone was set to say that Dave Green had a chimp out, they would have figured that I had on the stream done something irrationally angry and self-destructive. And, usually it's an implied would be a detriment to my reputation, to people actually taking me seriously as a thinker. Then somewhere between Trump's election, I mean, really, I don't remember this ever being used positively before 2023, but it was definitely before 2024. Chimp out became something that could be used as a tool against government. And, so like, I think probably the and then we can go back to when I was wrong. People will criticize me for this. I remember the original time that chimp out was used as a positive description of online behavior, and of course it happened after the takeover of X, or takeover of Twitter by Elon Musk and its conversion to X. And the first time chimp out was used as a positive label was the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light brouhaha or scandal or whatever you want to call it. And I remember thinking that this was the stupidest thing ever. And you can go back to my old podcast and you can hear me talk about it. And I had reason, obviously. The reason is that boycotts rarely work. They rarely work. They rely on network effects, and they rely on a certain amount of focus that is not typically found in rural communities. So boycotts just generally almost never work, because in order to be damaging to a multinational company like Anheuser-Busch, it's not even Anheuser-Busch, like that's the parent company of Budweiser, but even above Anheuser-Busch, like what is it? It's some kind of over, like United Beverage Company or whatever. But let's just say Anheuser-Busch, because I can't remember the parent company of Anheuser-Busch now. But just to give you an idea, like this is the actual brand is two levels down from when any shareholder would feel any pain, as a depreciation of product value, as a depreciation of actual revenue. It's been consolidated. It's been diversified. It's been conglomerated two other times. So you're taking this gigantic combine of different interests and you're boycotting this one little thing with the idea that there's going to be an upstream effect such that the company is actually afraid of pissing you off. Now, again, hypothetically, this could work, but boycotts almost never work because they're not focused enough. They don't last long enough, and the companies are too large. And the companies are more afraid of litigation. They're more afraid of torts. So whenever we hear the left is doing boycotts, usually those are in support of some legally actionable problem that the company has had. Like they've had a discrimination problem. Well, discrimination triggers boycotts. That's one thing where you could hurt the company. But the real way you hurt the company is that your discrimination lawsuit goes in front of a progressive judge and they offer some astronomical payout, like billions of dollars, for the impression that your hiring practices might not be fair, or creating an environment that is hostile to African Americans. There's no equivalent of first of all, there are conservative judges, but they do not have the activist perspective that progressive judges do. There is also not a civil rights act that benefits conservative client groups, and there's no large legal firms that like taking on these cases and making bank when all of the other pillars of power work together. So conservative boycotts are almost always just pure boycotts, and conservatives live in rural areas, which means that they're harder to organize, they're less coordinated, and since there's no overarching media apparatus that can link together these disparate groups of people and keep them focused on the product, they almost never last. And that's not a conservative thing, that's a populist thing. Populist energy is very, very, very short-lived. It does not last very long. That's not what populist energy does. And so you know, fine. Budweiser hires Dylan Mulvaney to do this absolute idiotic limited edition cover with that person's face on it, which is, of course, this is hideous. It's the kind of trans women are embarrassed about. This is a joke. It's basically a troll. This person is already a spurg and a provocateur, and it's obvious that this trans identity exists just to piss off. Well, I mean, it exists to piss off everyone, but specifically, it exists to piss off white women. Which is, again, this is 2022, 23. The left thinks that it's invincible. It thinks that it's never going to lose a culture war victory, and the impression is, well, we can just push the envelope for as much as we want. So why don't we take the most cringe trans woman who's ever walked onto a social media scene and then just push that on middle America as hard as possible? And, they do this campaign to kind of do that, like they always do. I mean, these are all these kind of girl boss people who run these companies, incredibly risk averse to anything that has to do with crossing progressive lines or doing anything innovative with the product, but, very willing to push the envelope on culture war issues because they think that their ass is covered. And in the meantime, they get blindsided by this massive, massive boycott that can only exist because it's organized through a media apparatus on X that is not controlled by the mainstream. This works. Bud Light takes a big loss. They essentially bend the knee. That is a victory. Technically, that's fair enough. That is something that you might call a victory. Again, this is sort of like there was this movie, The Englishman Who Walked Up a Hill and Walked Down a Mountain with Hugh Grant from the 90s, I remember. And they're arguing over whether a hill in Wales is an actual mountain, which is, of course, this piece of identity for the Welsh people. And the cartographers who are coming to this village and talking about how high a hill has to be in order to be a mountain. He says to the villagers, well, look, if this thing were in the Himalayas, you wouldn't even notice it as a mountain. It's got to meet some objective criteria. And, Wales is not particularly hilly. I mean, the entire British Isles aren't particularly mountainous. Maybe certain areas of them. I feel like I've been to a few mountains there, but coming from the United States, they're not very mountainous. North America is much more mountainous. Asia is much more mountainous. And the Welsh people are saying, well, or the Welsh people in this village are saying, well, it's not in the Himalayas, it's in Wales, and therefore it should count as a mountain. And there's this discussion. The Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light victory is like a huge victory for the conservatives when it comes to corporate boycotting. If this were a progressive boycott, this would be seen as a massive failure, right? Given the kind of boycotts and public action that were taken against companies and that cost them, billions and trillions of dollars of legal damages, and that got entire HR staffs hired during the 90s. Given that whole period of time, if you mixed in a boycott that cost Anheuser-Busch a few $1 billion, it wouldn't even register on the landscape. But because this is the right wing, because this is the conservative side of America and the conservative side of the West, a small victory is like this huge victory. And suddenly chimp goes from being a pejorative, something that you only apply to people when they're crashing out, to being a new strategy that we can use. Mainly, we can only really use this strategy because we're not getting algorithm blocked by X. If the algorithm was in the hands of people who were not sympathetic, the strategy would simply not work. The populist energy could not be maintained long enough to create even the impression of economic damage for a company the size of whatever company owns Anheuser-Busch. But this starts off, this was 2 years ago, right? It's been a while. But this starts off a series of what I consider to be kind of bad lessons that we've learned. And this comes into the idea that's very popular among conservatives that we have to do something. And okay, sure. Well, what is something? Well, the something that conservatives always want to do are the things that have the most that feel the most immediately cathartic. So, for instance, conservatives have much more military experience as a cohort than do progressive white Americans. They are better at using violence. So, they always like this idea that they're going to get into a locked battle with with either progressives, like in a civil war, or more likely with progressive clients, either of, how should I put this? Either of the urban non-white variety, either of the urban African American variety, of which, a lot of downtowns are kind of, I'll just say it explicitly, a lot of downtown areas are incredibly violent because of these populations that have been moved in over the last 80 years. And that they see themselves coming into a violent conflict with those client groups, or alternatively, they see themselves coming into conflict with like the crazy people that the progressive side keeps as its clients, either the literally schizophrenic people who, well, I don't know, are schizophrenics anybody's clients? That the people who are just social, or whose brains have been essentially hacked by memes and have fallen into some rabbit hole and get the idea that they're going to achieve something by shooting up a Catholic church, as in the recent school shooting that took place towards the beginning of September. I think it was end of August, beginning of September. Or more in the client group section, the thousands of crazy Antifa people. Once more, this is kind of ridiculous. I've heard a bunch of people go on about this. Um, you know, First of all, chimping, like I said, it's populist energy. It immediately dissipates. You will create a campaign of chimping out, and if your guy is in office and if you control a social media platform, then you can exert power that way. But if you have any ability to do anything else, chimping is almost always the worst thing you can do. And furthermore, the more you chimp out in an uncontrolled fashion, the more you are a slave to the social media algorithm and the government's domination of the social media algorithm, which is absolute. The only thing that can contain long-term power is essentially focused individuals, who are ideologically convicted and are willing to make sacrifices for a cause, of which the progressives have many, many more people than we do. Although I think that's in the process of changing, and one of the reasons why progressivism is dying. Or alternatively, having a very, very tight amount of organization among similarly minded people. And in this capacity, conservatives are totally cooked. Their ability to organize politically is just it's orders and orders of magnitude less than the progressives. You could argue that this is due to institutional infiltration, and you'd be right, but it's just a reality. And so really when we are people are talking about how, oh, we need to chimp out, we need to put more pressure, we need to complain more about how fast the Trump administration is enforcing. Like Charlie Kirk gets shot. It's obviously by a cell. The FBI does not appear to be doing a very good job. So, not a bad idea. When people say chimp out, try to put pressure on the FBI, sure, go do that. And as an influencer, as someone who speaks in public, as a father, I can't tell you how much the Charlie Kirk assassination has affected me personally. I will never forget this. I will never forget what I was doing when I heard about it. I want to bust this, and I'm pretty sure that it was a cell that killed him. That's speculation. Please don't hold me to that. We don't have the evidence in yet, but I'm pretty sure that shooter did not act alone, or certainly not without a whole Discord group of people having foreknowledge of it, of which we do have some scant evidence, depending on what you call evidence. I really care about this thing. But guys, the chimp getting angry at social media and putting pressure on Kash Patel or on Trump, this is diminishing returns. Almost anything else that you could be doing would be more effective than complaining at these people. Specifically, if you're a conservative or live in a conservative area, organizing. That is the one major deficiency that Red America has. That's not the only reason. There's 80 years of institutional disadvantages that have been brought against Red America, but the consequence of those 80 years of institutional disadvantages have resulted in a blue America that can organize and a red America that just can't. And that's something that we need to fix. And any energy spent inside that capacity would be a major improvement. And it reminds me of this whole thing, the hammer and the nail. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, when you're really good at guns, everything looks like a solution that could be solved using guns. And so, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death, I and want to make this absolutely clear. I'm not trying to call anyone out. I'm not. This is not. And I've heard this from multiple people. So please don't insinuate that I'm trying to subtweet any individual person. I've seen this from a lot of conservative influencers. But in the wake of the Irina Zarutska stabbing, in the wake of Charlie Kirk, one of the most popular responses is get armed. And I think being armed is a great idea. It is a great thing to know how to use a gun, to use it for self-defense. I support the Second Amendment. Obviously, I'm a right winger, right? This is not news to anybody. But guys, this is totally the hammer looking for the nail. This is not the nails looking for a hammer. Of the violence that we have seen coming from the left and its client groups, almost none of it could have been solved with a gun. I guess perhaps the Annunciation Church shooting, that might have been solved if the right person had been armed at the right time. And certainly there were other school shootings where the authorities didn't act for hours. And in those instances, an enormous number of lives could be saved with the correct application of self-defense by the right person. But I'm going through my Twitter feed and I'm seeing like memes. Next time a girl gets stabbed on the subway, she's going to be dressed like this. And you've got like the Irina Zarutska thing, but she's wearing a Trump hat and she's got like this big revolver stuck in her coat pocket and she's sitting on the same subway. I hate to say this, guys, but if Irina Zarutska had been armed, she still would have been dead because that guy shivved her in the neck. She wouldn't have been able to get off one shot no matter what she did, and neither would Charlie Kirk, and neither would half of these instances of progressive client group violence, that none of them would have been able to save themselves using guns. People are recommending this because they're good at guns. And the same thing is true for defending yourself in your church. Your church should have a church defense program. The men of the church should get together and figure out how to defend your church. Just like, much more importantly, I would say, a neighborhood watch program. Because although church shootings activate our almonds and get us really, really excited and really, really chimpy, they are much, much, much more rare than random street violence that overflows into your neighborhood from other places. So if you're worried about the defense of your family in reaction to violence by the left or violence by the leftist client groups, the Neighborhood Watch program is a much better option. And by all means, start a rifle club. That can be part of it. Neighborhood Watch programs usually involve reporting, not shooting, but you should still do the rifle club by all means. And it's a great way to organize. It's a great way to build relationships with other like-minded, believing individuals so that you can affect positive change. And as a matter of fact, the connection is going to do more for you than the actual gun training. Case in point, people talking about how everyone in a church should be armed. No, this is where we get into the realm of kind of silliness. Every man in a church does not need to be armed. There's this thing called division of labor that we've established. And not everyone in church even needs to be necessarily good at having weapons skills. You only need a few people to run a neighborhood watch program. You only need to have a few designated security officers who are very, very well trained inside of a church. And in fact, it's better to have fewer and more trained individuals in a neighborhood watch program, or in a school security program, or in a church security program, than having every single person do the exact same thing, like a militia, like you were like the 1776, and you need to have like bodies there because you can't get the bullets firing fast enough to repel the British. This is not the world we live in. Organization allows you to do more than just saying, oh, what's the immediate thing we need to do in this situation? Well, let's all do it. Look for what the situation requires and then try to meet that need. And always, always, always be planning. Always be planning. The always be organizing, I should say. I mean, planning. Plan always beats chimp. Always be planning. Always be organizing. Those are the two, planning and organizing are the two most dangerous things for your enemies, because they're able to react cohesively to whatever emergent situation comes up. The next thing that happens, I guarantee you, it will not be what we expect. But the network will always help us. The ability to network and communicate with each other, specifically communicate locally, will be able to help you no matter what. So the neighborhood watch program you put together to defend against a spike in crime, maybe the spike in crime diminishes because Trump is able to do a good job at scaring local police, or not really police forces, really district attorneys, scaring local district attorneys straight, and you have people do bail again, and all of a sudden the crime wave goes down. But that organization at the Neighborhood Watch could help next time there's a major power outage because our grid's smashed, or the next time that there's a flood, or the next time that there's any kind of crisis that needs to be reacted to. The network always helps that. The plan always helps that. And I think that's really what people kind of need to. I mean, people need the Civil War stuff. Look. I mean, I don't know. I'm on Scott Greer's side here. We're heading in the direction of a civil war, spiritually speaking. We're nowhere to any kind of situation where there are armies marching around. Modern Americans aren't organized well enough to do armies marching around. Today I'm going to share some videos with you today, and I think that we should look at the armies. Hopefully the sound's coming through. As a matter of fact, I can put my headphones on. I have this whole setup here, but this is the army that the left is going to send at us here. I'll make sure I actually get this here. Well, let's see. Yeah, okay. Hopefully I'm not blowing out anyone's ears. But this is what modern leftists look like. This is not an LGBTQ protest. This is an anti-ICE protest, and so this is what they want to be the opposition force to a modern military. It's this. This collective is not going to wage a conventional war against shit. It's not. I mean, it's even kind of weird looking at it for a while. I mean, it's kind of funny because I'm pretty sure that this is Portland. I can't say any landmarks. I used to live in Portland, so I should know. Whenever I watch this video, I'm expecting to scroll over a landmark that I can recognize, but I don't. But let's watch it again here. I hope I'm not. Is the sound too bad? Can I ask a question here? In addition to not looking like a actual military, like if you look in the early 20th century, protests looked like paramilitary demonstrations. This is like there's all this music playing in the background. There's all these bright colors. Does anybody look happy in this entire crowd? Like, what's going on? What emotion are they trying to communicate? Are they trying to intimidate me? Are they trying to, like, what am I supposed to get? I mean, I assume this is Portland only because it's so so white. Like it couldn't be Minneapolis. It couldn't be New York. It'd be way less white if it weren't New York. Oh, I saw a smile. Oh my God, I saw one smile for this entire thing, this entire protest, where they had this dance music all dressed in rainbows. I saw one smile and it was from a boomer. That's the progressive army that we're looking at right there. We can do here's the other half of this. This was posted by the Portland. Yeah, here we go. Portland representative posted this because they wanted to tell the world that Portland is not a military target. It's obscuring my face. That's the most damage they're doing. Yeah, here's the other end of the leftist progressive activist organization. So you've got kind of the angry people smashing cop cars in downtown LA. I'll play that one again too. Maybe this time it won't obscure my face. You've got the Gay Pride Festival where nobody is smiling. And then you have the No Kings protest. Boomers LARPing as like Woody Guthrie or something. What is going on here? At least they're having a good time. Like, it looks like they're genuinely having a good time. But this is like a geriatric ward has been let out for the day. There's no young people here. They're on a totally different wavelength than they have children. Maybe we just saw their children. They certainly don't have any grandchildren, it looks like. That's what the modern left looks like. That's what the modern left looks like. We are not having a civil war. That's not something that is going to be contested in a modern conventional contest of arms and strategy and troop movements. This is all ridiculous. I mean, it will result in these cities becoming ungovernable. It will result in random violence, and we need to be aware of that. There is almost certainly going to be an escalating level of political violence. And if you're involved, like I am, if you're involved in organizing, then that's going to be something that we're going to have to take very seriously as a risk of operating in these spaces. But it's not going to be a civil war. It's not going to be something where we need every man between the ages of 20 and 40 to be practicing with AR-15s or some sidearm. This is something that is going to be fought in the long term. It's going to be fought in a very, very low and chaotic level of violence. Oops, it's me fought with my microphone. Okay, hopefully that is going now. It's not going to be fought in any conventional sense. And what really worries me about the whole chimp out Civil War dialectic, kind of the bad habits of the modern right, is while everyone is here trying to study Fort Sumter and trying to learn how to fire a high-powered rifle for the first time badly, why aren't people organizing? Why aren't people focusing on other things? Why aren't people picking up the cultural pieces that the left has left behind? While we're doing this, the big problems, like every problem that progressives are having right now, is an opportunity for us. Look at those marches. Look at those marches. I guess either the protest by the geriatrics or the unfun pride parade. These people are miserable. They are not motivated, and they have completely lost the culture. That is an opportunity. If we spend all of our time focusing on Civil War scenarios and Second Amendment remedies or whatever, we're going to lose the major opportunity in this moment, and that is to be an alternative to the left in a very, very visible and a very, very public way. If Charlie Kirk were here right now and we had a big party, I mean, no one like me could draw crowds like that. But if there was a fun Turning Point USA rally right next to that completely dejected LGBTQ protest against ICE, the contrast would be palpable. You could notice it immediately. And the cultural power of doing that would be enormous, especially if you could find some way of pulling it off in a blue city. Safely, mind you, which I guess might be hard to do. But again, the safety of that gathering is not going to be ensured by carrying concealed carry handguns onto the scene. It's going to be canceled the second one single gun is discharged. And so the situation is just not really matched. The remedies I'm hearing don't match what the actual problems are on the ground. Or, I mean, people say about this all the time. There are school boards, there are city councils. Now you can lose a lot of time going in and doing meaningless bureaucratic work for no-name politicians and accomplish nothing. But if you're organized and focused, you can actually get something done. You can actually get something done productively, and that will advance your cause even inside a kind of degrading political environment that we obviously now occupy much, much, much more than every individual person, prepping for a civil war or whatever. But that's, I'm glad that people are actually hearing the videos now. I was a little bit worried that people couldn't. The reason why I'm doing these videos is there was a video that I did want to review, largely concerning California politics, which is a hobby horse of mine. Well, the headphones really screwed up my hair. But anyway, maybe we should do some super chats and we'll come back to take some questions from the audience, and then we'll come back to the California political scene. Do a breakdown of, I mean, dialectics isn't dead, but you can still look at our elite California politicians. And maybe what we could do is we could do a little bit of a crash course about how you can conduct yourselves on interviews, not to look like a total tool. I mean, I thought, I'm just a dumb engineer. I was told I didn't have the people skills and that the girl bosses should take over. But I'm looking at some of these people, some of these politicians, this new generation of California politicians who I checked their ages. They're all born in the 70s. So I mean, they're less than 10 years older than me. They look a lot older than me. But I mean, these guys are born in the 70s, and man, they could use some pointers. So let's do let's do some super chats here. All right. That's just my test super chat here. We'll go through them, and then this isn't Ask Me Anything, so we'll use this as inspiration for whatever else we want to talk about tonight. Jacob Lowe for $4.99 USA, 3-month subscriber streak. Thank you very much. The Golden Thread for $50 USA. Wow, that is very generous. And since this isn't Ask Me Anything, I'll have to give a really good answer for this. What vocations do you perceive the greatest asymmetry between need and presence from right-wing men is over the past decade? Off the cuff, mine are priests, storytellers, and magistrates. Love from Virginia. You were part of my journey from atheism back at the Church of the God Man Jesus Christ. Keep it up, have courage, and don't despair. Thank you. Well, excellent super chat. This is hard to say. So, your suggestion about the vocations that right-wing men need to undertake in the modern world. This is very, very difficult question to ask. Of your list, in broad strokes, the only one that we definitely need more of is priests. Christianity is the only religion left standing. I am convinced that atheism and paganism are dead ends, collectively speaking. I'm not saying that there couldn't be a legitimate pagan religion in the future. It is logically possible. That does not make that religion true. But I just deny the idea that there is some kind of unified theology that uh, we're contending with inside the right wing. Every single time I engage with pagans or atheists about the theological topic or about the weaknesses of Christianity, all it is just the same view from nowhere critiques that I know and loved or I experienced for 10 years in the stupid theist versus atheist debates. But at the same time, the one place where the atheist and pagan criticisms on the right do really cut to the quick, the place where they do really connect is on the subject of Christian leadership. Christian leadership is absolutely terrible. And it's not a Catholic thing, it's not a Protestant thing. Although I do find the Catholic versus Protestant flexing on Twitter to be absolutely cringe. I mean, I push back on it. Whenever I see Protestants try to pull a flex on Catholics, I feel like I need to defend myself the same way that I know I shouldn't engage in the Christian versus pagan battles, but I still have to do that. Uh, I guess to the advantage that Protestantism is a real thing. Catholicism is a real thing, and their conflict is a real conflict. There's actual real theological principles that they disagree with. They represent actual real groups, and for that reason, it is a much more serious debate or conflict than the pagans versus Christian conflict or dialectic, because the pagan versus Christian dialectic is just fake. It's just internet posturing, and there's nothing behind it. The Protestant versus Catholic debate is a real debate, but it's also one that there's no upside to. The problem with Protestantism and Catholicism are weak leaders. That is their primary problem. If they could get their act together, if they could find the magic and the presentation style that accompanied something like early Jordan Peterson, not post Benzo's Jordan Peterson, but early Jordan Peterson, they would rule this generation of young men. They would rule this generation of young men. And with that, they would have the most mobilized and effective political force, not necessarily in numbers, but in terms of the ability to actually project enthusiasm and direction. And instead of that, we are arguing about constitutionalism and kings. We're flexing over denominational conflicts and political denominational conflicts that have not been relevant since the 30 Years' War. And the real things are neglected. The real problems with Christian leadership are just not getting the attention that they deserve. And this is a huge missed opportunity. Now, obviously, if you're not a man of the cloth, you can't just tag in to that whole world. Certainly not if you're Catholic, but even if you're a Protestant, Protestants deny this, but there is a lay clergy distinction inside almost all Protestant denominations, and you can't just hop into that without years of training. But we absolutely need a new generation of young religious leaders that are going to actually react to the culture as it is and not to the culture as people thought it would be in the 1970s. You know, either the clergy is either progressives from the 1970s, although that's decreasing because of just the fact that there is so little enrollment among people who are under the age of 60. So they're either liberals from the 1970s or they are conservatives from the 1970s. And either way, they're totally disconnected from the actual problems we face right now. Now, as for the storytellers or magistrates, this is much more complicated. By storytellers, I think you mean people like Isaac Young, or John Slaughter, or any of the numerous people that publish right-wing books or that right-wing books. I have a whole list of them. We've got tons, and they're very good books. I absolutely recommend young right-wing men to pursue cultural creation. The problem is funding. First of all, the problem is I think that some work needs to be done with kind of getting the right thing made. You know, speaking of storytelling, people are doing things like they're doing grand sci-fi epics, which I love. They're doing pulp, which there's been some good pulp. You know, John Slaughter is kind of like this hard-boiled detective pulp, more of a classic pulp variety. A genre that in many ways we've forgotten since our memory of pulp is largely characterized by the science fiction-y stuff, like weird tales, like H.P. Lovecraft, like Robert Howard. But there was this whole genre. The more popular genre was the hardboiled detective novel, and that's being revived very well too. High quality stuff, and not there's not room for improvement by all means. Throw your hat in the ring. The problem is our funding sources. Well, we just can't get the funding on this, and the audiences are still pretty small. They're pretty small because young men have not been introduced to to um, to reading habits. They're not aware that there is a whole world of books that's available to them. And also, I'll say this too: books are a fundamentally social reading habit. So the reason why you read books, I mean, there are very, I mean, let's take books down a notch here, right? This is not the 19th century. They're not a very efficient way of absorbing a story. And because of that, most of the time, modern readers read books so that they can discuss it with other people. Because books, while they're not very efficient, they tend to last longer in your mind. They tend to become more of a part of your personality. So, in one way, they've lost their power as an efficient storytelling medium because there are better alternatives. But in other ways, they have increased their gravity, but that gravity, you're only enticed to make that investment if you think that there's going to be a social reflection. That you think that there's going to be other ways that you can bring this book into your life that are not strictly the very long time you spend reading it. So we don't have the funding for storytellers. We don't have the audience yet. It's coming, it's getting better. But anyone who's going to enter into that genre has to be aware of the fact that this is a slow process. And so you're probably going to have another job on the side. That's just the world we live in right now. There's also the fact that of the funding that we do have, it's fundamentally misdirected. I talk all the time about the Daily Wire's Shakespeare problem. So the Daily Wire has millions of dollars to make movies, and it makes these like weird ripoffs of Hollywood movies from 20 years ago. And they're not bad, but they're still cringe because they're obviously ripoffs of Hollywood from 20 years ago, and the code is really low class. But why don't they just make Shakespeare? Like there's a built-in audience. They're not offensive to traditional audiences. Why don't they just make Shakespeare? Why doesn't the Daily Wire make Shakespeare? And it's for me it's a mystery. But I mean, maybe they think it wouldn't sell. Maybe they think that their audience, or at least the audience that pays for subscriptions, doesn't want to pay for something that's highbrow. But I know I was just watching this the other day with my wife. I was watching this show called Jim Henson's The Storyteller. Now I remember this TV show from my own childhood, and all it is obscure, more dark fairy tales being told via use of Muppets, and it's amazing. The feel is great. It codes is kind of folkish and cultural and thick, and it feels like you've really seen something, even though it's just like it's fairy tales, it's stories for kids, like 200, 300 years old at the youngest. Maybe even well, I guess the oldest ones could be even 1,000 years old, or maybe 2,000 if they're really really old, like from Aesop's Fables or something like that. But that is something that is within the budget of the Daily Wire, but they don't make it. They're obsessed with competing against Hollywood. It's like the whole Moneyball thing from that movie that ruined baseball. I guess the concept ruined baseball, right? If you think like the Yankees in here, you're going to lose to the Yankees out there. If you think like Hollywood in here, you're going to lose to Hollywood out there. Doing these kind of movies that the Daily Wire is doing is playing into the game. And the same thing is true with magistrates. Magistrate is just a nice way of saying administrator, which is simply a nicer way of saying bureaucrat, which, a necessary thing. You can't have magistrates without control of the institutions. And currently, nobody is creating right-wing institutions that are people are creating right-wing institutions for sure, but they're not creating right-wing institutions that require administrative bureaucracies. So maybe in the future, the magistrate will be a vocation for you, but it is something that is very much in the future. And I think that's kind of, being kind of creating culture for the time we live in is something that I think conservatives struggle with. They tend to make it for the past or for an idealized future that hasn't kind of come about yet. So that's that. Um, Megamax for $20 USA. Hey Dave, with the new release of the FFT, Final Fantasy Tactics Remake, on Steam, when are you going to start your gamer arc and start streaming the game and make your inevitable video essay about how Deletta Hyrule did nothing wrong and how Agrius Oaks is best girl? I'm very excited for this next stage of the channel, given Discourse is dead. Well, actually, I was thinking of doing a live stream of that on my wife's channel. We have a gaming channel on her stream. We haven't posted to it for the longest time. And Final Fantasy Tactics is a very, very, very long game, and one that is very frustrating. You lose a lot in it. I personally can't imagine. I mean, I played through like one level of the War of the Lions thing on the iPad, like when I had a vacation 8 months ago, and it took me a long time to get through the first few levels, and I'm like, I never get through the plot arc. Yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics, in my opinion, is one of those eternal classics. They remade two of my favorite games. They remade Dawn of War, the original, and they remade Final Fantasy Tactics. So somebody in the old gaming industry is really has my taste. Uh, and I think Final Fantasy Tactics, the plot holds up. It's very Shakespearean. It's very tragic. I showed my wife the first few levels in terms of the plot when I was playing through it, and she liked it, but she said it's like watching it's like watching the cabbage. It's like watching my old Cabbage Patch dolls put on Game of Thrones. And I kind of laughed at that comparison because it's true, right? Like the chibi Final Fantasy animation style it's like these incredibly serious plots, and in the case of Final Fantasy Tactics, almost classical plots, and the characters all look like Cabbage Patch dolls. Although, and Agrius Oaks is the in-universe Joan of Arc character, or the in-universe Brienne of Tarth, if you want to use a George R. R. Martin character. But anyway, it's thank you very much. That's a good idea. Um, Monkey Gordo for $10 USA. Hi, Dave. Would you say to someone who wants to pursue creative endeavors aligned to our movement, but soberly intuits that they will likely never possess the skill to create something of quality? Tips for creating things that are good and worthwhile outside of reading and life experience. Oh, yes, I know. This is my number one thing about the this is my number one thing for creating anything. Of this has worked in my life too. It worked for this channel. So I mean, people. I started this channel in 2016 officially, which is, I should say, it's when I really started getting traction, because I had a blog for like 10 years before that and nobody read it. And it was because I knew that I liked talking about things. And I knew I liked writing about things, but I didn't really have a reason for the blog to exist. So I just put the blog out there, and anytime there was something that I felt I needed to write about just to get it out of my head, I wrote about it, and nobody read it. Uh, it wasn't until the sort of Sargon of Akkad era of Gamergate, the response video era of Gamergate, that I really came into my own with the whole blogging thing, because I realized that someone desperately needed to tell Sargon something. Someone desperately needed to correct the debate performance of Carl Benjamin. So the first serious video I made that wasn't just me debating atheists, and then re-recording uploads of that in real life. These were real recordings in Seattle. My first actually uploaded video that interacted with the online world was, I can't believe Sargon was so wrong. Here's how he was wrong. And so, and all this is to say that in creative endeavors and in building companies, you're looking for the need and then moving in to fill that. So find something that you like doing, or do something that you're passionate about as a consumer. That's fine. Like being a patron of the arts is fine. That's your first step. So if, first of all, if you don't like consuming the thing, and every now and again you come up against an artist that does not like consuming the thing that they produce as an art, that is very, very rare. Almost all artists get their start by first being passionately in love with receiving the music or the art, and then they just had to try their hand at it. And that's the same thing that you want to do. You want to become passionately involved in a community of creation or art, some creative endeavor, as a consumer first and foremost. And then what you're going to do is you're going to immediately notice that there are things wrong. There are things that need to be fixed, right? This community could be doing a better job at X, Y, or Z. So why don't we do that? And then you ask yourself, what would it take for me to manage X, produce X, do my own Y, try my hand at Z? Those questions, the kind of engineering questions about how do I take the next step in improving the thing that I love, once you get into that mode, that's where real inspiration hits. And you will either discover that you have the ability to fix this problem in a meaningful way, in a way that people value, or you'll discover that the problem was harder than you thought, and you'll learn something about your passion that will be an important dimension of your own thought about the thing that you love. I mean, you have to accept failures where they're at. I mean, I did a number of failed things. Like I always mention this as one of my famous good failures, like the Cana Society. Like the Cana Society was Sildings and the Old Glory Club in Basque weaving 3 years too early, right? But I learned from that failure all the things that don't work. Like I learned from that failure all the things that don't work. And because of that, I'm much better at advising people on how to do things now in the future. So that's the way I'd approach this particular question. All right, let's do 3 more, and then we will go do the video. Maybe 3 or 4 more, and then we'll do the video review. Absolute Defender for $3 USA. I'm going to miss your Matt McManus responses. That loss really hurts. Yeah, I get these like really long. I wrote an entire like good essay series about Harry Potter because I was angry at Matt McManus over him being a total like douche. I mean, like he's just such a, you know, the thing is, the reason people are like, oh, why were you obsessed with him? People, it's funny because before Matt McManus, I used to get in fights with Adam Friended and PSA Sitch. And when I got into fights with them consistently, people were saying to me, oh, you're so obsessed with Adam Friended and PSA Sitch. You're so obsessed. You're so obsessed. And I know similarly, people do, they have beefs against James Lindsay or Joel Berry. Like Joel Berry is surprising to me. I had a debate with him, but I have like, he's fine. He's confused. Like my reaction to my debate with him is this is a very confused man. But I didn't want to like slam him down or anything. But people always tell me every time you have a habit of refuting a lol cow, or you have an extended back and forth that goes over the course of years, your internet audience will accuse you of being obsessed with this person or that. And I've gone through like 4 people that people tell me that I'm obsessed with them, right? And until it took discourse to die out entirely for that to end. And even now, people say that I'm obsessed with dunking on JJ McAuliffe, whatever his name is. He really irritates me. And are you obsessed? Because I think he's like an idiot. But it's it is it's not an obsession. Like it's dialectic, right? Twitter, even though discourse, as we would understand it as humans, is dead, is fundamentally dialectical. It's fundamentally call and response. But what made Matt McManus kind of my main call and response guy for the longest time was the fact, well, it wouldn't have happened if we hadn't both been alma mater of the University of Michigan, which is, it's not the only school I got. I have a degree from 3 schools. And, for some reason, though, Michigan's always been my school. And specifically, the Wolverines have always been my team, my college football team. the extent that I painted my Blood Bowl team to look like them. So that, there you go, right? And the thing is that because of that connection, because he was a professor at University of Michigan, it felt sort of like simultaneously, it felt like he was the same age as I was. So there is that. I think he might have been a little younger. He was the same age as I is, same school, but as a professor. And I always wanted to be a professor. So it felt for a second that Matt McManus would have been me had I made several decisions differently. After a year and a half, 2 years of going back and forth with him on X, that's absolute bullshit. Matt McManus is nothing like me. I would never end up like that. I'd have to be so. I don't think he's lying because he has convinced himself that what he is doing is morally justified or trolling. So I don't think that he's definitely saying things that he knows are not true, but I think he justifies it as trolling. But given the seriousness of the conversation, especially in the wake of recent events where people were getting sent to jail and where people were getting shot, and you can't even be honest about that stuff, and we're still like, that's not trolling. That's just poisoning the well against real people and hurting real people's lives. And as an intellectual publicly, that's your core responsibility. And I would either have to be really stupid to miss the fact that that was my responsibility, really autistic so I couldn't see it, or really, really unethical. And I don't think and Matt McManus is either way more autistic, way more stupid, or way more unethical than I am. Probably a little bit of all three. And for that reason, if nothing else, he is a much different person than I am. Is also more agreeable, but I chalked it up to him being Canadian. And I guess I'm half Canadian in a sense, right? Asteroidal Assassin says, I'm not going to miss Matt McManus. He sounded like the adults in Charlie Brown. Yeah, he talks so fast. He talks like this. He talks like I'm going to say this. He reminds me of the character Bubbles from the Trailer Park Boys. Like the blonde hair and the giant glasses. And his ability to like crop pictures of himself with his eyes blanked out, so he looked like, what was it, Beaker and Bunsen from the Muppets or whatever. It's like the nerd thing from the 2000s, but we all learned in the 2010s that whole nerd thing was totally cringe and pretentious hipsterdom, and he's still doing it. He's still doing like the Big Bang Theory aesthetic. And it just, I don't know. I could never do that. And it just was depressing me after a while, pretending like this person was somebody who I could actually have a conversation with. Aspiring Misithro for $10 USA. Luth Templar has a piece predicting the NJF would flip Democrat. Luth Templar has a piece predicting that the NJF would flip Democrat in an effort to consolidate young men's dissatisfaction with Trump. I like Luth, but that seems far-fetched. The Democrats would have to run to the right of MAGA. Impossible. Would you consider speaking with Dem strategists as discourse? Yeah. No Democratic strategist is ever going to speak to me. They won't even speak to Republicans from the Daily Wire. The New York Times, I guess that's Ross Douthat. I guess, every now and again, you saw the Doom Scroll podcast with Jonathan Citarella. They had Emily Jasinski there, and she's one of these, she's a graduate from one of these, I think they're like these Koch-funded think tanks, the Independence Women's Forum or whatever. These forums that were developed in the late 90s with all of the money from the Koch brothers that then kind of had to become more populist because there was no more audience for them. And Emily Jasinski is a great person. I get the sense that I would like her a lot if I met her in real life, but she is the most moderate of moderate conservatives. She doesn't deal in any edgy early 20th century ideas. She's very liberal friendly. And even seeing her on leftist podcast like Doom Scroll was a huge double take that rarely ever happens. Sure, the Democratic Party wants to talk to me, like my local representatives, I'm all ears. But why on earth would they do that unless they thought that I could be bought? I mean, they'll talk to me if they think that I'm like Counterpoints TV, that famous show that got bought up by Brianna Wu and Progressive Victory. I mean, talk about having no dignity, having to go on for your entire career and go, yes, I took money from Brianna Wu to repeat her opinions. Yes, I took money from Brianna Wu to repeat her opinions, and then completely make an ass out of yourself. I mean, just absolutely beneath anyone's dignity who actually cares about their witness in a very serious endeavor. I keep on emphasizing this. I mean, like, is anyone not aware that politics in the 2020s is a very, very serious endeavor? We're playing for keeps here, guys. We're not on the doorstep of a civil war, but this is not something that, like, we shouldn't tolerate people who are paid by our political enemies to repeat Democratic Party talking points, which is exactly what Counterpoints and Brianna Wu were doing. Like, zero, zero. I don't care. Like, if you work with those people, I have zero interest in talking to you. Like, no one should take you seriously ever again. Once you've accepted coin for opinion, I know. Okay, oh my God, you're taking super chats right now. Yeah, I know. Okay, I'm taking super chats, but I'd like to think that that doesn't influence my decision. All right, so we got through 3 super chats. So now I have a word from Raid Shadow Legends. Now, can I talk to you about Think Politics? No, I don't do sponsorships either. But yeah, look. I mean, we all have to. What is it? Real news. I forget. What are the all of the in video sponsorships people typically do? I forget. But it's funny because it's always the same 3 or 4 people who fund political content, and it's always ground news. It's ground news. Is that the one? It always is like the same spiel, and it always feels really sincere. And look, it's fine. Like, I'm reading super chats. I get money from Subscribestar and Substack. We all have to get compensation for the time we put into this project. Like, we could be doing other things to enhance our lives during this time, and I really appreciate it. But that's not the same thing as what Brianna Wu was doing. That's not the same thing as Counterpoints was doing. That's like, here's a giant bag of money. This moved me to a bigger house. Let me promote Jamal Bowman or some other politician that's totally against my principles otherwise. Thank you, Brianna Wu, for this giant banker's bag full of money. Can't believe it sometimes. It's atrocious. But in the interest of time and entertainment, let us put away entropy and do the other video watch thing that we were doing. Oops. I am not seeing myself on the media. Let's see. We'll have to do this over again. That's odd. Well, I might have lost a video. We won't know, but I don't dare close OBS just yet. So give me a second to see if I can figure out what is going on. Maybe. Okay. That is unfortunate. Can people still hear me? Well, I guess you can't, but all right. Let's see. What if we just trash this? We added another video capture device. And we added the webcam. Or we can just unplug it and plug it back in. Apologize for this, guys. It is very, very difficult to do this on the fly, especially when your webcam stops working for some strange reason. That is odd. Doesn't feel quite the same without the webcam. What if I took the old webcam and put it in this place and then tried to do it that way? That is odd. Okay, well, I don't know. Maybe I could do more super chats while I wait for this thing to wake up again. It is a little unfortunate that I lost this, but really, that is so unusual. I am going to take a minute here, guys. Let me do an intermission, and then this doesn't ask me anything. We can do whatever we want here. We'll see if this actually works. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. I guess this does work. It's totally misformatted, but it works, kind of. Let's see. We'll just auto crop it that way. Okay, there we go. I mean, in fact, it kind of looks better, I dare say. Okay, I guess new camera worked. Okay, perfect, guys. Thank you for your patience. And now everything is back to normal. Maybe we can actually do this. Maybe I should take another super chat while I'm at this. Anyway, let's keep on going. Let's do another super chat. I'm not quite ready to go straight from that disaster to the videos, but let's go to aspiring misanthrope for $3 USA. Also, pray the rosary for Trump, Vance, and our government leaders. They need it, and you, royal you, not you, Dave, need to pray more. Well, me, Dave, does need to pray more. I just got back to confession, and part of the thing that I confessed was insufficient prayer life, which I did say that I would try to rectify. Maybe I'll try saying a decade a day. There's a time when I did a rosary a day, and I just couldn't make that consistent. It was very, very, I know that my wife did that for a decade. I'm not like a year long decade. It's so hard to maintain. Okay, let's go to Isaac Young. Let's do 3 more here. Isaac Young for $5. What is your take on labeling spiritually distant art as right-wing art? I've met a lot of people who think that we need to reject this frame, but the left is going to force the conversation as calling us right-wing extremists anyway. I mean, look, you shouldn't label any right-wing art. It's just there's no point. Art is art. This is what a lot of conservatives never seem to get this. They always say something like, "Oh wow, oh wow, don't you know that person was a communist? Don't you know that person had some bad opinion? Don't you know that person was a homosexual?" Yeah, sure, but their art was really good, and pretending like this person's bad opinions was some kind of made that reality not a reality is kind of it Codes is really kind of clueless and low class and not really serious. I mean, it doesn't code as low class. Codes is unserious. It codes is whenever you say that art was bad because the person creating it was left wing, you're sounding like James Lindsay. You're sounding like somebody who can't separate his emotions about the person from the ideas being expressed. And art is fundamentally about an idea being expressed. Some very holy ideas were expressed by some very unholy people, and some bad ideas were expressed by some otherwise very good people. I mean, think about this. If you judge people ideas on the piety of the people who talked about them, you'd think that, your clueless Christian aunt had the best insight onto political issues when really you were only getting them from whatever television show she watched. So I would avoid calling things right wing art. I wouldn't be don't be upset if people call you right wing art. Just be like, oh well, whatever. Like Sam Hyde's a good example of this. Sam Hyde does not care when people call him right wing, and he does not bulk from just telling you his opinions. But at the same time, he doesn't go out of his way to put right wing as a label on the stuff that he produces. So that's more or less the way I would do it. Isaac Young for $5 USA. I find the real problem with Protestant Catholic alliance is that bad actors will continually try to compromise the faith and dogma on the other side and undermine each other. Really hard to maintain essential boundaries. Well, I mean, just like don't listen to bad actors. I don't know what to say. Like, what do you want? Like, there'll be bad actors inside the Catholic Church that will try to kick up arguments like what's better, Latin Mass or the Novus Ordo? And then pretty soon you'll be at each other's throats over the liturgy. But like the liturgy, I thought the liturgy is important. Like few things are as important as the liturgy is in Mass. But having a big old fight on social media about the liturgy is stupid. And the same thing is true for the Protestant Catholic arguments that persist. These are dialectic traps. You need to avoid them. You need to mute the group chats where they occur, and you need to refocus the conversation on avenues that are productive. And that's the only way to do it, as far as I can tell. All right, let's finally try to get to the movie portion of this. All right, guys. So I wanted to take a look at a very special set of videos, and this special set of videos is an examination of California politics. Now, for those neophytes in the audience, California politics is a very, very special thing. This is the world in which Nancy Pelosi and Gavin Newsom are apex predators. Half the people here are connected to Jim Jones if they're over the age of 70. This is the state that thought Kamala Harris was a good idea and ready for prime time. And so you're thinking, okay, Dave, California politics is pretty bad. But, I've seen Gavin Newsom, like American Psycho, stripping the skin off of his face or whatever. And that's pretty presentable. But I don't know, because this is what I'm confronted with. Like, this is a message, a message from one of my state senators, a very responsible man here. Just let's see what he has to say.
Trump just put out an actual enemies list of Democratic elected officials who haven't been nice enough to ICE. And yet, if you call Trump and his cronies fascists, you're somehow inciting violence.
Oh boy, it's my favorite Scott Wiener. I mean, what's the idea of, first of all, he's recording a TikTok short and he's got ear pods in his ear. I'm not going to help this guy. Like, well, what could we do to make this look less like some rat creature had the great idea to start a TikTok channel and more like a message that a politician might actually give us? First of all, you're not on a phone call you're making a TikTok video. The ear pods are already bad. I know lots of people who wear ear pods 24/7, but good Lord, all that makes me look at is your gigantic ears. And the only thing that the gigantic ears call attention to is your receding, sloping head. And the only thing that the head augments is the gigantic nose and narrow chin. It's like Pete Quinones used to say, you could not draw a picture of this person without committing a hate crime. You could not draw a picture of this person without committing a hate crime. There's no photo accurate way to draw this person's face without making it look like something that came from Jude Sood and the Third Reich. And this is the apparent. And this, we should say this. This is not something that like happened to Scott Winter. He cultivated this appearance. He cultivated this look. This is what the San Francisco Bay Area thinks is a responsible adult.
You know what they say, if it walks like a fascist and quacks like a fascist, it's a fascist.
I just love that little TikTok.
Put out an actual
I'm so proud of myself for
officials who haven't been nice enough to ICE, and yet if you call Trump and his cronies fascists, you're somehow inciting violence. You know what they say, if it walks like a fascist and quacks like a fascist, it's a fascist.
What is I just don't understand TikTok. It just comes down to me not understanding TikTok. This is an expression that you see women doing on TikTok all the time. But this kind of smug mug, I call it, we should probably just call it the smug mug. This is the smug mug. The smug mug for the camera, where you have some absolutely insane point that sounds good in your own head, that's not insightful at all, and you make this little smug mug for the camera, like, oh boy, look at me. The sensation that these people are the people who rule over us. But okay, this is just an appetizer. The real video that we have to go over here. And I couldn't believe this one. This one is a classic. This one is a, so, and I need to get this one. I apologize, but I saw this video and it's Katie Porter. And Katie Porter, for those who don't know, she is a it's the thing is I don't think she's a representative anymore. I think she's a former representative. But for whatever reason, this woman was the front runner for a California gubernatorial election. This is not a random politician that was scooped up out of the gutter. This is a front runner. This is a career politician. Now, age is an interesting question here. This woman is, I don't know her exact birthday. I think she's about 8 years older than me. 8 years older than me. She's been elected to about 3 or 4 positions of high authority in the government. She's been in front of a camera most of her career, longer than I have, certainly. And she is the most celebrated politician, one of the most celebrated politicians in the largest state in the United States. And her big final boss is going to be to answer a simple question from a news reporter. Let's see how Katie does here. Katie Porter. Let's see how she does, and we'll just kind of check in and see how this goes here.
What do you say to the 40% of California voters who you'll need in order to win, who voted for Trump?
How would I need them in order to win, man?
Well, unless you think you're going to get 60% of the vote.
Okay. I can't get over this. It just, okay. Again, I can't help but emphasize this fact. Just like we have to acknowledge that Scott Wiener's appearance is not just a dispensation from God. It is he cultivates his appearance to look like something that would trigger a person with that stereotype, either stereotype in the case of Scott Wiener, would instantly trigger that stereotype. And that's intentional. And arguably, Scott Wiener's appearance is a troll. He's trolling right wingers. He's trying to get them to attack. This is a much odder situation. So this is a local news reporter. CBS California. I mean, it's a local. It's syndicated. Whatever. It's a local branch office of CBS, and I imagine this is the Sacramento station or whatever. And they're calling all the candidates in to do interviews with them about their positions for public consumption, like they always do. Unlike Scott Wiener's appearance, which is a troll, unlike his TikTok videos, which are also a troll, unlike his smug mug, which is also a troll, arguably everything about Scott Wiener, as irritating as that video was cultivated, and I was having more or less the reaction to Scott Wiener that he wanted me to. Scott Wiener put that video on TikTok, knowing that right-wingers like me would be driven absolutely nuts by it, especially after the Charlie Kirk shooting, where the label fascist was used by the killer, more likely killers, as a motivation, as a modus operandi. Well, that's not really right, but as a motivation and as a justification for the assassination of Kirk. Arguably, you could say that the Scott Wiener media was cringe, it was ugly, but it was well conceived. What the fuck does Katie think is going on in this video? She's a 50-year-old woman. She looks older. I believe she's 50. She looks a lot older. She looks way too old to be acting like somebody from TikTok who has no situational awareness. She walks into a newsroom. This is not a webcam. Like, there are big cameras here that are recording Katie. Like, she can see the machines. Like, she's in front of multiple cameras. In the CBS newsroom, this is one of the most established networks in America. You cannot be mistaken about what is going on. You are being officially interviewed by the public for a job that you want, Katie. And they're going to ask you questions. And one of the questions they always ask people is, how do they manage their cross-partisan support? Because unlike what most California office holders think, this state does in fact have a sizable Republican contingent in the rural areas, like most other states in the United States. So, as part of this fluff interview that you're getting, because this is a fluff interview, she's asking you the oldest question in the book, which is, how do you expect to get people from the other party to vote for you, considering that very often state candidates go up against other Democrats, and the tiebreaker is the vote of the Republicans as a remainder vote, even though it's almost below a third of the population. Actually, it's more in the case of 2014 and 2024. But perfect reasonable question. Let's watch it again. She's sitting in the room. She gets in the room. The cameras are rolling. She gets the easy question.
What do you say to the 40% of California voters who you'll need in order to win, who
Reasonable?
voted for Trump?
How would I need them in order to win, man?
Well, unless you think you're going to get 60% of the vote. You think.
Okay, reasonable question. And her response is like, why would I need them to win, ma'am? That's the other thing too, is that, I mean, this is just chef kit. I mean, we're sampling awful, like, this is, you guys might have shit libs in your states. You might think that you have got irritating, pretentious women in the UK just because you have a police state. and Keir Starmer in charge. But let me tell you, the vintage of awful women, of affluent white female liberals that we have in the Golden State just can't compare. This is what homegrown California quality can get you. It's just the purity of the shit liberty, the overconfidence, the main character syndrome. She gets a question that she does not like. Her response is, something about this question felt bad, so I'm going to scoff at it. I'm not going to think about what it means. I'm not going to think about the answer that I was obviously given to this question. I'm just going to scoff at it because I'm the main character. I'm the main character of this show. And because this question feels bad, I need to communicate to you, the interviewer, that it felt bad. And you're irresponsible for asking me, ma'am, why would I need to get their votes, ma'am? I might call your manager, ma'am. Not only am I going to imply that it's the job of the neutral CBS interviewer to make me feel good about the questions, the boilerplate questions that I'm being asked, I'm also going to mug for the camera. I'm going to do this, she does the Scott Wiener smug mug for the camera. She instantly does that, just by a second after. She's very aware that she's on camera. When you watch this video, you think that she might not be aware that there's something recording her. The first thing she does, turns around, smug mugs to the camera, get a load of this interviewer, get a load of this woman. She's asking me hard questions. She's asking, not even hard questions, she's asking me questions that make me feel bad. What a ridiculous thing. I don't need Republican voters. This is, first of all, this is the wrong answer. This is the answer that she tells her friends. When she's in her little group chats or when she's among her friends, this is how she would react to these questions. If she's in a dinner party with friends or in a group chat, I'm sure these people have their version of Discord, right? If she's among her friends and someone asked her, how would you get Republican votes? She'd be like, Republicans, I don't care about those hicks. I only need Democrats to win. Look how awesome I am. And and if she's at that dinner party, everyone would be just clapping. Oh my God, you're so brave. You don't need no Republicans. You're a strong, independent woman, Katie. You don't need no Republicans. You're so good. You're not performing for your Discord server, Katie. You're not performing for your Berkeley dinner party or your Sacramento dinner party. You're talking to the camera, to the public generally. And politicians never say that they don't want people to vote for them. You never do that in this is different in Britain. I don't know. I know Europeans are a little bit more elitist than Americans are. But is this a thing that you can do in other countries? Just tell 40%, 30% of the population that you don't want their votes? This is certainly not, I should add, this is certainly not the rehearsed talking points. I know what these guys do. They rehearse talking points. She's been coached for this interview. And the coach knew this question was coming. And the answer that the coach told her was something like, when they ask you, how do you get Republican votes, Katie? You say something like, well, of course I can get Republican votes. I'm from Orange County. That's a conservative district. I get Republicans all the time. Why wouldn't they vote for me? I'm awesome. That is the approved answer. Now, but no, she hears the answer and her fifis go in the wrong direction and they trigger her defense mechanism. And so she launches into her pre-programmed response. She responds to it the way she would respond to it if she were in a group chat or a Discord server or a dinner party with friends. And she's expecting, she looks at the camera, like the cameraman's going to applaud her. Oh my God, you're so brave for not wanting Republicans' votes, Katie. You go, girl, you go.
How would I need them in order to win, man?
Well, unless you think you're going to get 60% of the vote. You think you'll get 60%. Everybody who did not vote for Trump will vote for you. That's what you're thinking.
In a general election, yes. If it is me versus a Republican, I think that I will win the people who did not vote for Trump.
What if it's you versus another Democrat?
I don't intend that to be the case.
Okay, I have to stop here. Just what? I can't. I'm sorry if people think this is wasting my time. I can't believe these are people. I mean, How did we let ourselves be ruled by such morons? At least with Scott Wiener, he's disgusting and he's evil, but or Gavin Newsom, like he is just evil. He's not disgusting. But at least with those evil people, you get the sense that there's some kind of like demonic intelligence operating behind them that put them in charge. This is so stupid. Uh, Immediately, she starts going into the scenario that she wants. Oh, of course I'm going to win all Democrat voters. I'm going to win all Democrat voters. Well, Katie, like think about what the follow-up question is going to be. You must know that Californian state candidates don't only have to worry about running against Republicans. They have to worry about running against other Democrats. You know this. Like, don't you understand that you're communicating to another person that this is going to trigger a follow-up question? That you can't just end the conversation here. Again, the reason why she's doing this is someone asked her this. Someone, can you win without Republicans, Katie? Can you win? Oh, of course I can, because I'll get all of the Democratic votes. Oh my God, Katie, you're so brave. You're so amazing. Let me clap for you. You're such a hero. Please be our candidate, Katie. Just please. That's the response she is getting. That's not a rational response, because a very likely scenario is that she runs against a Democrat. And she simply, I don't even know if she had this ready to go, but her response is, well, I'll make sure that there aren't any Democrat voters that are running against me. Like, what is this? Like, what is this? Are you Don Corleone? Are you gonna are you gonna have them all whacked? Are you gonna like break their legs so that they don't decide to run against you in the general election? Like there aren't any strong Republican candidates out there. Like the Democrats could easily take second spot. But no. I've arranged it. Like behind the scenes, I've arranged it. And it's like, how could there not be a follow-up question to the implication that you're going to eliminate your other Democratic rivals through some nefarious backroom deal, or maybe just outright murder? Like, oh no, I'm like, no, I'm going to imply that I'm going to eliminate my rivals off scene from some extra election nefarious mechanism. And then like the interview is going to proceed and I'm going to get another softball. Like there's not going to be a follow-up question to that. Like, why would there be a follow-up? I'm just going to eliminate them. Like they're just not going to run against me. Like, isn't it simple? Like doors just don't, like Katie, I'm not an ordinary person. I'm Katie Porter. Things don't have to happen for reasons. Doors just open up for me. I go into the room and then everyone just kind of gets out of my way. For my entire life, everyone just gets out of my way and paves the road to power for me. Why wouldn't they? I'm Katie Porter.
Vote for Trump.
What if it's you versus another Democrat?
I don't intend that to be the case.
So how do you not intend that to be the case? Are you going to ask them not to run?
No, I'm saying I'm going to build the support. I have the support already in terms of name recognition. And so I'm going to do the very best I can to make sure that we get through this primary in a really strong position. But let me be clear with you. I represented Orange County. I represented a purple area. I have stood on my own 2 feet and won Republican votes before. That's not something every candidate in this race can say. If you're from a deep blue area, if you're from LA or you're from Oakland, you don't have an experience.
But you just said you don't need those Trump voters.
Well, you asked me.
So the response you just heard there was the response that she was supposed to initially give the question before her brain fell out of her head. And she just launched into a feel-good tirade for the group chat.
If I needed them to win.
So you don't
I
think
feel
you
like
need
this
them
is
to win?
unnecessarily argumentative. What is your question?
Okay, good. So she realizes that she needs to reset the conversation, right? So, okay, we got off track, right? Let's start up again, right? This is an opportunity for her to, that right there, up until this point, we hit a kind of like a snag in the road. But if Katie can reset the conversation in this moment, she might be able to just kind of give that answer again and pretend like she never said the first part. Just I mean, she's a politician, right? That's what politicians excel at. They get questions that they can't answer. They ignore the question and they give the easy answer instead. That's the number one thing you learn in politics and in rhetoric. Always answer the question that you wish you were asked and not the question that you were actually asked. And this is an opportunity to just give that little boilerplate that she just gave there. But what happens?
The question is the same thing I asked everybody, that this is being called the empowering voters to stop Trump's power grab. Every other candidate has answered this question. This is not
Correct. And I said I support it.
So immediately, this is, again, Katie can defeat this if she controls her emotions. She just has to answer the question and try to ignore follow-up questions. But she doesn't. She gets into an argument about why the interviewer is asking her a question, even though it's obvious that the interview question has been written in advance.
So, and the question is, what do you say to the 40% of voters who voted for Trump?
Oh, I'm happy to say that. It's the do you need them to win part that I don't understand. I'm happy to.
Now this is... Just say what you just said. Just say that you're from Orange County and you've won Republican votes before. Just say that. Just say, I'm good at communicating to Republicans, and then move on. Instead, she wants to win now. She realizes that last question didn't land right for her, and now she wants to relitigate it. She can't help herself. She can't help picking the scab off. She can't help just revisiting this and going one more time into the breach to try to make the interview. She literally is this, for some reason, and this is the heart of the matter, this leader, this person running for governor of the most populous state in the union, one of the richest states in the union, in the most powerful country in the world, she cares more about dunking on this blonde reporter in this moment than she does about running her campaign. To the point where she needs to make her look stupid. She needs to make her look stupid for asking the question. She needs to look like she's won the question. She needs to get applause from this reporter. And if a question made her look bad, she has to relitigate it and make the reporter look stupid for asking it to begin with, which means that now Katie's going to toss her opportunity for reprieve right in the fire.
Answer the question as you have it written, and I'll answer it.
And we've also asked the other candidates, do you think you need any of those 40% of California voters to win? And you're saying, no, you don't.
No, I'm saying I'm going to try to win every vote I can. And what I'm saying to you is that...
Well, to those...
You can see it's just in that moment, she tries to pull a dunk.
And what I'm saying to you is that...
And she realizes in this moment that she contradicted herself. Now, look, it's still recoverable. It's still this is not a faux pas yet. It's a bad interview for sure. It's a bad interview, but this is a recoverable mistake. If you just say, oh, I misspoke, and let's continue the interview. Act like it didn't faze you. She contradicted herself, but she's not here. She's not here. She doesn't care about winning power. She doesn't care about losing power. The only thing she cares about is looking good for the camera, about being the person who's in the right in this little cat fight they have going in between the two of them. And so now that she's obviously contradicted herself, first saying that she didn't need Republican votes, and then secondly saying that she was trying to get them, she does the chimp out.
Well, to those voters, okay, so you...
I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to call it. Okay. Thank you.
You're not going to do the interview with us?
Nope.
I mean, she already is doing the interview. Does she not? She not aware that she's being recorded? Is she not aware that? It's just so funny. I mean, this is your politics ruled by people. They're acting like old ladies in a bridge club or something. What is this? I'm not having this. I'm never coming to this bridge club again. Okay, great, but your spur gout's being recorded. Still, like one last opportunity here, Katie. Like just leave. Just don't say anything and leave. Don't relitigate. Don't try to argue. Don't try to dunk. Don't try to put blame on her.
Not like this, I'm not. Not with 7 follow-ups to every single question you ask.
Every other candidate has answered
I don't
our
care.
follow-ups.
I don't care. I want to have a pleasant, positive conversation, which you ask me about every issue on this list.
I want to have a pleasant, positive conversation where I look like a girl boss and you have to barge in here with your totally reasonable questions and then point out that I contradicted myself. What is this? I thought this was a puff interview.
And if every question you're going to make up a follow-up question, then we're never going to get there.
Ms.
And
Porter,
we're just going to circle around.
I am an
I have
investigative
never had to do
reporter.
this before, ever.
You've never.
It's like the chef's kiss. Like I've never had to have an interview that's asked hard-hitting questions like, how do you intend to get Republican voters? I've never had to answer a question like that before in my entire life. This is outrageous. I'm a politician. What I'm supposed to answer questions from the press? What is this? Is this you're treating me like I'm some kind of Republican.
Never had to have a
end an
conversation
interview.
with
To end
a
an
reporter?
interview.
Okay, but every other candidate has done this.
What part of I'm me? I'm running for governor because I'm a leader. So I am going to make.
So you're not going to answer questions from reporters? Okay.
And the funny thing is that all of the dunks that this woman wants to get on the reporters is taking on her. You're going to remind everyone when you storm out of an interview that you're a girl boss, that like don't need no help, don't need no support. I'm a wonderful person, don't you know? I can answer any question. Well, then answer the question I just asked you. Were you not expecting that follow-up? What were you expecting the reporter to break down and cry when you explained to her that you were a girl boss leader of California?
Why don't we go through? I will continue to ask follow-up questions because that's my job as a journalist, but I will go through and ask these, and if you don't want to answer, you don't want to answer. So nearly every legislative...
I don't want to have an unhappy experience with you. And
like, what is this? Like, I want to have an unhappy... You're having an unhappy experience with her, and it's being broadcast. What is this? Is she a waiter? Is this an HR negotiation? Like, is this some kind of HR check-in at quarterly meeting? Like, let's dialogue with you about how to have a positive experience. She's not even concerned about how this looks. She's aware that she's being recorded because back when she was trying to take the dunk at the beginning, she smug mugs the camera. And now all of a sudden it's a therapy session. Now it's like, oh, I'm now on the couch with my therapist. And I'm not going to explain. This reporter is like my therapist. And ordinarily, these interviews are like the questions that my therapist asks me. And the therapist asks me questions, and then when I give answers, the therapist validates me. But now somehow this woman who's asked me questions, when I give her questions back, she's not validating me and she's not giving me a pleasant experience. Like I'm not here to sell my campaign. I'm not here to rule. I'm just here to have a pleasant experience. I'm here to validate myself. Do you mind? Is it all right if we arrange the politics of California and the United States around validating my experience? Is that too much to ask?
I want this all on camera.
I don't want to have an unhappy experience with you either. I would love to continue to ask these questions so that we can show our viewers what every candidate feels about every one of these issues that they care about. And redistricting, it's a massive issue. We're going to do an entire story just on the responses to that question. And I've asked everybody the same follow-up questions.
AKA, this is going to air. If I were her PR team, I would have tackled her 2 minutes in and shut down the interview and made sure she didn't do any follow-up. This woman's career is over. I don't think I've ever seen an interview that's been quite that embarrassing in my entire life. It's just these are the people who rule us. They talk to journalists, they talk to reporters like their reporters are their therapists. The reporters exist to validate the Democratic Party. And the Democratic politicians just exist to like be like they don't have to answer hard questions. They don't have to come up with ideas. They walk in, they get validated, they get applause, they walk out, they go have wine coolers, or wine coolers are low class, but they go vacation in Napa or whatever, and that's their job. Like, and when we're in this interview, like, you're here to validate me again. These people are just unserious people. It's amazing looking at this. It's 40 years of girl bossing gave us that woman. 40 years of girl bossing gave us the California gubernatorial candidate who walks into a hard-hitting CBS interview and expects to get validated for the entire length of the interview. Congratulations. And I guess, like, can we link this back to sort of the topic of the conversation tonight? Well, I mean, not really. It's just the moment we exist in is incredibly unserious. These people have power over our lives. They absorb most of our income, an enormous amount of our income, through taxes. They mismanage our state, and they're in the process of demographically destroying the United States and almost all countries in Western Europe. And they're so secure that they just expect journalists to be their therapists, and or they're stunt doubles for when they like show how they're smarter than the journalist interviewing them. Part of me kind of wondered, the interviewer was a blonde woman with a cross. I kind of wondered if she wasn't triggered by that, because the interviewer was Republican coded. And so, the Democrat Party in the modern day is an incredibly spiritually insecure force. They have no ability to carry their self-assurance around with them. So whenever they see somebody who's coded like a Republican, who's a white male, or who's a woman who's blonde and attractive and looks like she's religious, they have to do something, anything, to put those people in their place. As a matter of fact, their entire political career is secondary to putting those people back in their place. It's absolutely amazing. I can't believe it. But on to the super chats now, or the rest of the Ask Me Anything. Ben White for $3. Hello, Dave. Will becoming a gym bro improve my social life? I work fully remotely now, so I need to actually fight against my introversion so I don't turn into a NEET with a job. Well, I mean, gym broing can't possibly hurt. Look, you're not going to meet people doing at the gym. That has never happened to me in my entire length of time doing things like at the gym. I mean, I don't go very much now, but when I was single, I used to go regularly. I never met anybody there. Most guys go out of their way to tune out everyone else in the vicinity. They all have their earplugs in. You're not going to meet anyone at the gym. You could do like a squash or a racquetball course that you might meet some people there. Or if you do some other hobby passion, then you go like, oh, let's do that, and let's go to the gym afterwards. That's like, I always like that. I always like, let's do something fun, or like, actually it's better. Like, let's do gym first and then go to whatever we want to do. I don't know. I think I did that once with like board gaming. Like it's board gaming night, or it's war gaming night at our local game store. Let's go to the gym, and afterwards we can, go to our tournament or whatever. Like, mix the jock and the nerd a little bit. I mean, that's horribly, it feels like a line from the early 2000s, and indeed it was, but that works. I would meet people doing a passion and then go to the gym with the people, especially if you're single. When you're married and you have a kid, your entire schedule revolves around managing your time around your wife and your child's schedule, and so you can't make those arrangements consistently. But it is something that in your 20s, I think you're in your 20s or 30s and you're single, why don't just meet friends doing the things that you're most passionately about? I might say plan beats Chimp, but anyone who's listening to this, if you want to do something, in the wake of this Charlie Kirk assassination. Join organizations of like-minded men. There's multiple ones that are already operating, both online and off. Like, I'm an emeritus member of several of them. The Exit Group, Sildings, Beowulf, kind of the same organization. The OGC, New Founding, if you're a little bit more of an entrepreneurial spirit. All of these things are opportunities for you to meet up with like-minded individuals locally and in real life. An organization in real life is the name of the game. That needs to be the most foundational layer of resistance. Before that becomes part of your plan, very little can be done otherwise to do anything that will last. Certainly chimping out online isn't going to have as much of a lasting impact. T of 221 for $20 USA. My older brother is on the verge of ending his marriage of 4 years to his wife. They have no children, been disconnecting for the past 2 years, and they decided to take a 3-month court separation where they'll be permitted to date others. I'm devastated for him, but not surprised. What would be the best way to support him? Well, I mean, look, if people are already I have encountered situations where people have had horrible things happen in their marriages and they've been able to put the marriage back together again. And that's happened both with people that have had kids and who have not had kids. But this sounds like, there was a person yesterday, this sounds like you've already crossed. This already sounds like an effective divorce is what I'm saying. It's, this person's marriage is over as far as what you're telling me. At the point where where they have a court separation officiated and they're already dating other people, and there's no children involved, like there's something that's keeping them coming back to the table. I think the idea that this marriage could be saved is like very, very small. And I wouldn't spend your time trying to save the marriage. Obviously, I'm Catholic and I don't really believe in divorce, but considering that there's no children, hypothetically, this could be grounds for an annulment. I don't know what happened, right? But let's assume that you can't possibly save the marriage, which it looks like you probably can't. What you want to do is you want to support him. You want to listen to, and this sounds very feminine, doesn't it? Like, you want to be there for him. You want to be a good friend. You don't want to be his therapist, though, right? I mean, you want to be there for him. You want to listen to his problems, but you want to do that in the context of being productive. Men don't do this thing where they grieve with other people by complaining for hours and hours on on a couch or in a bar or over a glass of wine or whatever. That's not really how men operate. Men heal by pouring their sorrow into some productive concern. And then in the process of doing that thing, organically, he might share with you some of the problems he's having. And this would be a great opportunity. Like the previous question was something along the lines of like, well, who do I go to the gym with? This would be an excellent person to go to the gym with. If he's not already going to the gym, this something traumatic happening is a perfect opportunity to go to the gym and exercise. It just that's the best way that men deal with grief, and that's the only way that they open up. So I would recommend doing that or doing something else with him that would allow him to see that, oh, I'm doing something productive and I'm waiting for this whole thing to blow over. If there's one advice I'd give to him, it's don't date. You tell me they're dating others. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Wait for the marriage to, okay, there's 3 possibilities, right? The marriage is already over and you're waiting for a divorce settlement. In which case, you dating other people will look bad for a judge potentially. It could result in other drama happening, other people's emotions being involved. It will put you in a worse negotiating position if you actually have to go through a non-amicable divorce. Second, no person you meet in this period of your life when your marriage still isn't over is going to be permanent. This is a period of your life where it's very, very, very unlikely that you're going to meet another spouse or a replacement spouse. The ink isn't dry on your divorce, if your divorce is even started. So it's not even illicit to start a relationship legally with them, even if you feel head over heels in love. And third, it's just, if you date, what you want to do is you want to kind of emotionally process what happened and convince yourself that your self-worth lies outside of relationships, which means that, look, I mean, if you really want to marry someone different, and this is a legitimate ground for annulment, just wait till the divorce actually goes through. Like, it'll make life so much easier for him, right? And if I were in this position, I would want some time to discover who I was and my own self-worth outside of the relationship with this person. Even though it's only been marriage of 4 years, that's a pretty short marriage. How long have I been married? I guess 7 years. Well, it feels like less time, but yeah, 7 years. That's interesting. I guess I met my wife in 2006, so it's been 9 years since I met my wife. But anyway, there we go. Mega Max for $25 USA. What is your variation of the "There Will Be Blood, I Drink Your Milkshake" that is directed towards some shit-live intellectual or elite human capital midwit? Yeah, they're very much the same people. Academics. I hate academics. It sounds like it get really, really funny. And this chat's to sponsor ExpressVPN on Raycon wireless earbuds. Oh, well, yeah, be sure. I use, guys, in this era of surveillance, I use VPN all the time. And when I use VPN, I like to use ExpressVPN, link in the low bar. But no, I mean, I did that There Will Be Blood thing with, because it just, they look like, modern academics look like Eli Sunday. Is that it? Eli Sunday is such a weird word, weird name. And they're just such little rats. They're small people, and they understand that they wield, in their words, great power over people. But they're not real believers. They're not real pursuers of the divine. And the thing about There Will Be Blood is that the main character, I forget, the oil man and the preacher are both the same people. They're both deeply jealous people. They're both people that need validation but are incredibly selfish. And they hate each other because they see each other when they look at the other person. But Daniel Plainview, that's it. Daniel Plainview. Daniel Plainview, though, unlike Eli Sunday, he's actually somebody who's willing to fight for it. He's much more of an animal, where Eli is this kind of like little snake. He's this little snake. He needs to get his validation by poisoning people on the side, and it just feels like, now I got you, you son of a bitch, and I'm going to make you pay for what you did. And that's why the milkshake scene is indelibly stuck in my mind. And of course, the "I drink your milkshake" thing, and people know this, but it was a courtroom line where, in the Teapot Dome scandal, where there was a misappropriation of federal lands scandal that was going on, and one of the things was private contractors drilling and exploiting oil resources that were essentially under land that the federal government owned, and people had to explain what drainage was, and he explained drainage through analogy to milkshakes, which you can imagine, like, this is what they had at the time, like the Coney Island milkshake. and so we don't really have an understanding of pipes or water flow for a lay audience in 1921 or whatever. So we have to use milkshake straws as an analogy. I can't think of what I'd be drinking. Like, I drink your audience. I drink it up. That would be something like that you could do. What these people want, what these academics want, is they want to get the validation and the authority that previous generations of academics obtained. And academics were never taken seriously. This is the same thing about journalists. If you go to the time of the Teapot Dome scandal, and you had a fancy dinner party, and a reporter from the New York Times or a New York Post or I don't know, New York Bugle. There are a bunch of them back in the day. If they showed up at your party, you might have the butler toss them out. Like, journalists were the lowest of low scum in the 19th century. They were muckrakers. They were very, very low class people. These days, journalists are treated like they are priests. They're treated like these are people you have to get on the right side of. They have actual power. And the same thing is true for academics. Academics used to have very, very, very low status. They used to be glorified school teachers. They were poorly paid. They lived in nice towns. They oftentimes trained very elite people. But they didn't make money, they didn't wield power, and they didn't influence government. And in the last 60 years, we've decided that journalists and academics are not these kind of mid-tier professionals, but are actually the guardians of our society. And of course, like all these people like Nathan Kaufness and Matt McManus and Nathan Robinson, they choose professions in journalism and academia to recapture some of this majesty of power that they remember from this bygone age. But it's not there. It's all gone. I mean, it is like that There Will Be Blood scene, right? All of the majesty, all of the authority, all of the prestige that's been under the earth for 60 years, that they remember previous generations of professors and previous journalists benefiting from. It's all gone. It's all been sucked dry. That land's been had. That land's been had, Nathan. It's all gone. All the authority's gone from the academy. Drainage. It's all gone. And they're sitting there just muling and trying to get attention on social media and lying because they have no idea what else to do, because their entire lives have been organized around trying to get authority from a system that is fundamentally dead. Do you like my Daniel Plainview impersonation? What a great actor. Who is the actor? I keep on forgetting the name. The guy from Last of the Mohicans. Blanking on it now, but it'll come back to me. Okay, Nerve AMV Maker for $5. In terms of holy ideas being expressed by unholy people, I can't think of a more morally insightful book than The Picture of Dorian Gray, and it was written by a man as immoral as one could be. Yeah, I mean, Picture of Dorian, well, if you want an even better one, do you want like one to blow your mind even more? Read The Selfish Giant, which I haven't read to my son, but I might want to try it. The Selfish Giant is a fairy tale written by I'm not doing well on names, guys. I'm sorry. It is Oscar Wilde. Thank you. I was going to say W.H. Auden, but no, this kind of similar characters don't allow us. But no, the Selfish Giant is this Christian fairy tale, this deeply Christian fairy tale that was written by Oscar Wilde. And it's just you couldn't, it's like, it could be from Grimm's fairy tales. It could be from Grimm's fairy tales. It is of the same caliber. It is of the same kind of spiritual direction. But at the same time, Oscar Wilde was like an incredibly degenerate person. And in many ways, Picture of Dorian Gray is his confession. The novel is the portrait of the artist. And in his main character, he kind of contrasts his interior degeneration with his outward moral demeanor and makes it kind of a point at emphasizing the fact. I mean, it was funny because when I read Picture of Dorian Gray in college, I had read Dostoevsky. Now I was just thinking to myself, my God, this novel, it's so overwrought. That Dorian Gray has no complexity to him. He is the vapid, evil, pretty boy. He feels like he could come from some kind of John Bunyan, Pilgrim's Progress, Christian story. He's the consequences of debauchery that you see in every early Victorian novel. He's the designated villain. And just to emphasize the contrast between appearance and inner soul, we have the picture, which always stays well, which gets more ugly and decrepit while Dorian always stays young until the roles are finally reversed. But I'm reading this and I think, oh man, this is so heavy-handed. How how could how could anybody like who's this supposed to resemble? I can read something like the Brothers Karamazov, and I can see Fyodor Karamazov in people in my life, like deeply flawed individuals. Or Ivan Karamazov, I can see in the pretentious New Atheists, although Ivan Karamazov wasn't that pretentious. I can see all these people in real life. These people are not caricatures, but in Oscar Wilde, I have this complete caricature. Dorian Gray does not feel like a real person. Dorian Gray feels about as real as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And you could tell me that Dracula was also around the same time, was written about the same time, I guess about 10 years before Picture of Dorian Gray. Okay, so is Dracula a big lesson in human evil? Isn't the lesson of Dracula that Dracula is just a bad guy who needs to get destroyed? So, is that the lesson of the Picture of Dorian Gray? The Picture of Dorian Gray, the lesson of that is that people like Dorian Gray are evil, and they shouldn't have been evil. Perfect. That is a lesson that I would expect given to people who were in junior high school or who were just looking for a horror story. Maybe this should be considered more like Bram Stoker's Dracula and less like Brothers Karamazov or Tolstoy, because nobody is like Dorian Gray in real life. And then my home state, California, decided to find the Dorian Grays in our state and make them our state leaders. And so now we're ruled by a series of people who are exactly like Dorian Gray. And apparently these crazy monsters are real and we have to deal with them as our overlords. I guess it's useful to understand that you can lose your soul by becoming so obsessed with appearances that you forget to actually introspect on the man that you are. It's a cautionary tale. But right now I'm just concerned that somehow we've made these Dorian Gray freaks our eternal leaders. Maybe we should have tried electing Dracula or Frankenstein instead. But thank you very much, Nervy and VMaker. Ben White for $5 USA. About 1 to 2 years ago, you posted a video of a leftist man in his 30s or 40s who recently received a bad health diagnosis. He spent a good bit of the video ranting about how it's unfair he had his conditions and wishes rightists were dead. I don't remember that. Okay, maybe I'll take your word for it. After Kirk's assassination and the subsequent leftist social media comments I saw on my own feed, I cannot feel even a shred of sympathy for that leftist anymore. He actually wants your family dead and hates you more than he loves his own life. Well, I mean, I'm kind of contradicting myself, but isn't this all an example of Dorian Grayism? These people have injured souls, and they very much lost their soul to the mirror, to the black mirror that was social media. And we need to be very careful of this, and this is one of the reasons why I emphasize real-world friendships so much. You can't fall into this online influencer trap, especially not the AI stuff. You've got to get your self-worth and express your principles among company of peers that are like you, instantiated beings. That is, I mean, obviously, the human ego is unlimited, and you could probably still get killed by narcissism, but it's more limited. In the real world, narcissism is limited by just the physical constraints of space and time. And because it takes discipline to make your body look good, but it doesn't take discipline to make yourself look good on Reddit or to dominate a social media algorithm. It's just playing into that. So what you're seeing in these people, and I should include people like Nathan Kaufness and McManus or Ben Burgess or I don't know, half these people. They're really people who have a soul sickness. And if they weren't so dangerous, it would be our responsibility to treat their wounds and to welcome them back in the fold. But we can't treat their wounds when they've got guns pointed at us. Maybe if there's some avenue where dialogue could open up again, we could re-engage this question. But in engaging with their social media presences is like arguing against the picture when Dorian Gray is going around killing people. That's, and maybe it's a more accurate representation of what they are, but it doesn't really cut to the core of what's the problem. I guess I probably mixed up my metaphors in that last one, because really you could argue that the picture is the more accurate representation of Dorian Gray. And all his friends are talking to the real Dorian Gray, but the real Dorian Gray is as static as his picture is. It never moves. Look, I don't know. I do get R.N. McIntyre saying they want to kill you, they want to kill you, they want to kill you over and over and over again. But there is a way that you can kind of fall into a trap there as well. They want to kill you is good if it motivates you to go to church, get organized, go to the gym, start building organizations. We've got several of them. You can email them, you can join. Start making your own art, start making your own content. If you feel so inclined, get yourself trained in self-defense, emergency preparedness, start a business. If it motivates you to become an adult and to become a man that other people can rely on, they want to kill you is useless. I think, though, it can get overplayed and people can kind of go into the mode where that's a reason why I can never go into a public space. If anything, we should be going into more blue spaces. We should be moving closer to the progressives, because those guys are on their way out. This progressivism is a dying ideological force in the modern world. The core of it has been completely hollowed out. Now, it is still institutionally as powerful as it's ever been, but insofar as the core belief, it is a failing proposition in the modern world. And if anything, we should be looking to challenge it more directly. And sometimes I feel like they want to kill you and your family. It's making you take a more withdrawn option when really you should be pressing the advantage. You should be moving out to the real world. You should be taking space. You should be asserting yourself. You should be making yourself bigger. And that involves taking risks. You don't make yourself better or bigger or greater in a social environment by shrinking away into your own little turtle shell. You get that by asserting yourself, by moving confidently into new places, IRL preferably, but failing that, I guess, in social media too, with the understanding that you know the dangers of social media, which we talk about all the time on social media. Hunger for $25. Evening, Dave. Hope you're doing well. Posted my question on Twitter. Just sending a super chat as a bonus. Keep up the good work. Oh yeah, you had a really good one, didn't you? Okay, well, let me go read that one here. You did have a really good one. Let's see where it is. I'm gonna have to pull up. This is why Twitter is so difficult here. Which tweet was the question posted on? Okay, so Hunger in his tweet says, I get the impression that the Charlie Kirk moment has passed. We live in a country with emboldened murderous radical leftists and an incompetent, slightly less murderous establishment left. What do you think the right should have done differently in the aftermath of its murder? Well, the only mistake that they really made was I thought that they should have a more solemn funeral ceremony. And I thought that they should have really found. Okay, here's a good example. And I don't even remember who that person was. Maybe I could find it on Substack. But in the wake of I think the New York Post wrote about this a little bit. In the wake of Charlie Kirk, we had the funeral. It could have been more subtle. It could have been more solemn. It could have been more of a party that Blue America felt ashamed at joining. But it still was fairly good. It still was a very good celebration. It still was solemn enough. But in that moment, in the Charlie Kirk moment that you were talking about, Hunger, the problem is that every young man in America was asking themselves, okay, so what do we do now? What do we do next? How do I join up? How do I move forward? Who's in charge here? And the only answer that the establishment of Turning Point USA had was, do you know who's in charge of Turning Point USA? Erica Kirk is in charge of Turning Point USA. Okay? Erica Kirk, wonderful courage, wonderful speeches in the wake of her husband's death. I can't imagine how hard that would be. And she had a wonderful witness, and I don't want to rob her of her, not her birthright, but of her familial inheritance, which is the ownership of Turning Point USA. But everybody in the entire world knew that for a variety of reasons, Erica Kirk cannot be the leader of Turning Point USA. She is recently widowed. She has 2 young children under the age of 4. She's bereaved at the moment where everyone else in the country wants to be mobilized. And unless nobody noticed, and I want to put too fine of a point of it, she's also a woman, which, we've mentioned this before. The number of women who are suited to be political animals inside a chaotic moment of high contention is a very, very small fraction of the female population, probably less than 1%. And I don't think that Erica Kirk is in that 1% of women who can take on that role. And for that reason, everyone knew she was not the leader. So who was the leader? Who was the leader of Turning Point USA? Nobody stood up. The establishment conservatives didn't put anyone, no one played their bench. The first thing we heard about was Brillin Holyhand. And his first introduction to the world is him wearing a button-up polo shirt on a Gulfstream jet flying to an event. And this guy looks like a twink. Like he is, I know he's a young dude. I know he's from the South. I know he's fair-skinned. And I know he's a young guy, right? And a lot of young guys develop into their masculinity later. This guy has vibes that would, in any other context, be kind of effeminate. And he's talking about how he's jetting to the next event and how we're going to really be the legacy of Charlie Kirk. And his name is Brillin Holyhand. Like his name is Holyhand, like jazz hands. Like, but not jazz hands. That's too masculine. Holly hands, and it's not Brian. It's not Bronson. It's a Brillin Holyhands on the Gulfstream jet. This is just like, this plays into the whole Robbie Soave, all Republican leaders are closet cases. It's unfair. This guy probably is not a closeted homosexual, but he was giving off those vibes. And in the week or so since he came onto the public spotlight, we have clips of him saying, "Oh, I want more legal immigration. Everyone can come to America. This is a propositional nation." And the guys in the audience are arguing against him and scoring points, and all he does is just give the glassy-eyed stare and repeat the talking points. And to be fair, Charlie Kirk, when Charlie Kirk first came on the scene, not the Charlie Kirk of 2024, the Charlie Kirk of 2019, I had him pegged as one of these Robbie Soave types. I had him pegged as one of these cardboard cutouts that doesn't have any passion and then is just kind of pushed forward by the establishment to be the youth face of the Young Republicans Club on campus. Sure. And, maybe in 5 years he would mature into somebody who would be a leader other people could follow. But Brillin Holyhand isn't the real problem. The real problem is that Charlie Kirk had been dead for 10 days and no young man stood up to basically take a leadership position inside the Republican Party or inside the conservative movement. Nobody stood up. And there were candidates, they just were not developed. The fact that Turning Point couldn't put forward, I don't know, just have a panel. Have a panel of like 20 up and coming leaders, like the best. Do it the Fortune world, like the best 50 conservative young men under like the best, the top 30, the 30 under 30. Let's do that. 30 under 30. 30 young conservative men who are up and coming that are under the age of 30 that you need to watch out for, and that there are new leaders of the post Charlie Kirk world. Nothing like that. Instead, we had events that were really done to bolster the social media profiles of existing people. And that's not what we needed. And look, I mean, in some sense, the Charlie Kirk moment will never be over. But in another sense, as far as normies are concerned, it is already over. And I think this was a big missed opportunity. GK Jesterton, I love that word. I wish I had that as my name. G.K. Jesterton, I'm curious if you read the recent essay from Murdoch about his struggle between the lures of neo-pagan vitalism versus the existential truth of Christianity. I know it's a trodden topic, though he put some interesting spin on the struggle. Well, it's funny you say that, man, because one of the good Murdoch episodes was the one that they did on religion just before they quit the channel in 2000. I think it was the last Murdoch episode was 2020, I believe. And, he very much expresses that feeling that he's torn between Christianity and paganism. And I think, inside the Murdoch episode, he makes an appeal to romanticism as being the one thing that unifies both the pagan and the Christian sensibilities into one future. And it's a really good episode of the Murdoch show. There's this funny thing where he's trying. Maybe this is the Catholic in me, but Always Sunny in Philadelphia gets me with this too. The improperly done confession that always cracks me up. Where the confessor wants like a harsher punishment than the priest is giving him, or trying to confess things that aren't sins, or trying to confess other people's sins. The improperly done confessional always cracks me up, and the center part of that episode was the improperly done confessional. So I always remember that one. The ultimate message that romanticism can be a proper substitute for religion it's incorrect. Like, so the message is wrong, but I respect the feeling, because I remember thinking that too. And so that even though the message is wrong, it's a great episode because the feeling is a properly expressed feeling for a person in that stage of their spiritual development. And I remember feeling it too, in the exact same way that Murdoch was. And because of that, it's, I wouldn't say it's great art, but it's passable from an artistic perspective because it's sincere, and sincere is more important than being right. But thank you. Sex Freakman for $10 USA. There's always this sentiment, right-wing art should be more innovative and original, but that usually just means transgressive. So aren't we playing the left's game? I feel that trad interesting dichotomy wouldn't exist if we would express how a pre-modern POV can address people's experiences as well as any other. Well, if you want to read somebody, I don't remember the specific essay that was written about this topic, but the master of this problem is almost certainly the late Roger Scruton. And he wrote about the problem of modern art and kitsch. So what is kitsch? Well, kitsch is what art people say when they mean slop. And what is slop? Well, slop is something that can be procedurally generated in an insincere way to prey upon sincere emotions that people are having in a consumeristic fashion. So I am horny. All porn is slop. That's one, porn. What separates porn from erotica, and it's arguably, if even erotica is unethical, is you can see art and find it erotic or even titillating, and it's not pornography. But what pornography is, it's like this on-off switch. I am horny. I then click on button, get pornography, and then I have that horny thing satisfied. Or the same thing for like romantic art. Like I want to feel that I am looking at good art and that I am seeing greatness. So I have this romantic picture that I look at, like Thomas Cole, and I like Thomas Cole, right? But still, or you know, David Casper Friedrichs or whatever. Right? Like I see this romantic painting that has this huge vista and it's magnificent and it's larger than life and it makes me feel these large emotions. But I'm not really like being challenged by that. The emotion, like I could just generate a picture like that. I'm not organically going around in life and experiencing these romantic feelings and then telling you about them so that you can go out and experience these romantic feelings. What I'm doing is I'm like, I know that my audience wants the romantic feeling, so I'm going to create art that elicits romantic feeling in them and then press that button again and again and again and again so that they can get the right fifis. That is the slopification of art. That is the kitchification of art, the reduction of art to a product. And almost all modern art across the 20th century has been trapped by the problem that something that is beautiful is easy to kitschify because it lacks that sacred and sincere dimension to it that all art has to have in order to be true art. And, this is the problem with, when modern artists on the left say that they want something original, usually they mean, I want to smash a norm just for the purpose of smashing a norm. And they have completely exhausted that without smashing their own norms. So now progressive art has entered into its puritanical phase and is kind of dying. But now there's a reciprocal thing where right-wing art, I mean, like Murdoch has never been done before. I mean, like you could argue that it could have been done a lot better. They could have they could have had, I think they put a little bit too much bigotry in it. I'm sorry, but like there's a little too much spice in, your goulash, Mr. Murdoch. But it was something that had never been done before. This idea of making a racist neo-Nazi sitcom where the characters made fun of themselves and slipped on banana peels was like the amount of self-awareness that it had. It was more self-aware than ordinary sitcoms on television. And it actually was transgressive. I mean, that's original. The problem is that Murdoch is a political cartoon and, it's not going to last for another 20 years. You had to have lived through the late 2010s or the mid 2010s to get that humor. It was very much for its time, but it was sincere and it had never been done before, right? The sincerity is really, so never been done before is not a requirement of art. Never been done before is a way to get around kitsch. If you're doing something that's never been done before, then it by definition cannot be kitsch or a slop because kitsch or slop is replicated, right? It's automated. It's part of a process. It's been trained. It's a repetition of a trained response, right? So if it's never been trained, if this thing you're doing has never been done before, then it by definition can't be kitsch. And the real thing we're trying to do is to avoid kitsch/slop. And kitsch and slop are just the same thing in different contexts. And so for instance, like Shakespeare is not kitsch. Or I mean, it can be. It can be. For instance, in the Victorian era, they used to have Romeo and Juliet where, Victorian audiences didn't like death or suicide. So they had versions of Romeo and Juliet where they don't kill themselves, which is like the kitchification of Romeo and Juliet. It's just like, I know Shakespeare is high culture. I am Victorian high culture person. Therefore, I know that for my pastime, I must go see Shakespeare. I don't like death, so let me watch this play and miss the point of this play because it's kitsch. But that being said, redoing an established thing well isn't kitsch because you're acting in the mode of a craftsman. So for instance, if I make a fine handcrafted silverware, that is not kitsch because like I can use it. It has a purpose for something. It's being enjoyed for the purpose that it is meant, and the purpose is right and wholesome. And if you say like I'm going to do a new rendition of Grimm's fairy tales or Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales, first of all, that would be awesome. That would I think it would sell well. And it wouldn't be original as art, although you could put an original aesthetic spin on it and therefore make it artsy. But it would still have an artistic nature to it because it's sincere. You believe the morals that are being expressed in this piece of art. You want it to change people's lives, not least your children. You want it to represent something that is eternal, the tradition, and you're expressing it with the craftsmanship and the attention that something that sacred deserves by its very nature. All right, thank you very much. Sex Freakman for $5 says, the Exian question is analogous to the art one. Even if paganism doesn't have a future, there'll be a demand for it until we can answer how Christendom allowed for leftism to rise, and how we'll prevent it from happening again. I don't know we can answer that. I mean, look, there already is an answer. Like, leftism will always arise. Like, you can't make an organ, at least not that we know of. You can't create cells in a natural human body that are not at least a little bit susceptible to cancer and aging. And so the question is, aging, I should say that leftism is a natural byproduct of Christianity becoming atheistic. That is the explanation for why it occurred. If you destroy God in Christianity, you get leftism. You get a death cult. That's what Gnosticism was before Gnosticism got subsumed into Christianity and eventually got wiped out entirely. That's what all of the mystery cults were before, of the late Roman Empire were, before they became subsumed into Christianity and ultimately turned into Christianity. So, I mean, Christianity emerged in the wake of death cults, and now when God leaves Christianity, it becomes death cults again. That's what happened. I mean, what else do we need to say about it, right? The solution to leftism is to actually practice the religion of Christianity, or really any religion. And the problem of paganism isn't the fedora. I mean, that's a view from nowhere. You know, paganism would have the exact same problems. For instance, most neo-pagans are shitlibs, and there are more shitlibs than Christians are. Why is that? It's because shitlibbery, or progressivism, comes from the atheatized Christian religion. And Christian tradition, I should say, not the Christian religion. After the religion has been destroyed and it's become a tradition, then you get leftism. So for that reason, pagans are just as susceptible to progressivism as Christians are, if not more susceptible. If what the pagan said was true, then pagans would be less susceptible to progressivism. And that's how I know that their claims of this being a direct, I mean, it obviously comes from the Christian tradition once God is removed. But the idea that this can be easily fixed just by worshiping different gods or false gods or gods you don't even believe in is on its face laughable. Saffron Park for $3 USA. What are the specific propositions that it would be useful to debate with moderate conservatives, the Babylon Bee, or conservative ink types? Oh, I mean, by the way, and to finish up on this question, just don't debate this. Like, unless you are convinced, like, I have met some pagans that have given me actual explanations of their faith. And the actual explanations of their faith have been, really, I'm just a Platonist. Okay, that's fine. But Platonism has the exact same problems and the exact same relationship with progressivism than does Christianity. It's over-idealized philosophical late-stage civilizational ethos, if you were to look at it from a Spenglerian sense. Platonism is itself an atheatized version of the original Greek pagan religions, where they literally believed that Zeus was a physical person sitting on Mount Olympus. In Platonism, the gods become eternal forms that, standing behind it is the great creator, the unknown God, the unmoved mover. I mean, if that's what you believe, A, you have the exact same relationship to progressivism that Christians do. You have even fewer people that believe your religion, and you've got no extant tradition of what a Platonist religious practice would look like. But more importantly, you don't represent most of the pagans that we encounter being hyper-aggressive. Most of the hyper-progressive neo-pagans are Norse pagans, and they believe in extant supernatural beings that are attached to certain races and lands. That's nothing like Platonism. So to even conceding that there is this thing called paganism that we're debating against is a bad frame, because it's frankly untrue. It's not true that we're debating a thing called paganism. We're receiving a variety of critiques that largely come from a view from nowhere that have a striking resemblance to the old New Atheist arguments against Christianity. And there is really no other rival religion of any meaningful size that is in the conversation right now, along with Christianity. Saffron Park for $3. What are the specific propositions that it would be useful to debate with moderate conservative Babylon Bee conservative ink types? It's always the same. It's always questions about proceduralism and the Constitution. They need to understand that the Constitution is a dead letter. Nobody in America, other than a handful of 20% of the conservative population, believes in the Constitution in the way that it would be necessary for the Constitution to be an operating ultimate final arbiter of disputes. In order for the Constitution to be the interpreters of the Constitution, to be the final decider of the exceptions through the courts, the country would have to almost uniformly believe in the sacredness and the eternal principles of the constitutions. 80% of the population would have to believe that for the Constitution to actually work the way that conservatives think it should work. But that's not the reality. In reality, 20% of America believes in the Constitution in anything other than a symbolic way. The progressives, they say they believe in the Constitution. They say, this is unconstitutional. They don't believe in the Constitution. They just believe in the parts of the Constitution that happen to intersect with what they believe anyway. So why should I care about whether it's constitutional or not? That's the conversation. They need to know that the Constitution is futile. They need to know that you can't limit government inside a religiously divided country. You just can't. The country has to spend every piece of, it has to essentially be a high spending patronage style government. Otherwise, it will get overwhelmed by its rivals and destroyed. Because you cannot have a party of small government inside a political contest where people buy votes. You just can't. Because the large government party will always win in the long term. You also have to understand that this is no longer a Christian country in any meaningful way. The right-wing cohort inside Western countries is overwhelmingly a Christian country. The right wing of America is a Christian sub-country inside the actual nation, the United States. And even inside European right-wing movements, Europe is much, 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 much more secular than America is. But even inside European right-wing parties, Christianity is still the largest real religion that is there. But that's not, in order to save America, Christianity would have to be believed and practiced by 60, 70, 80, 90% of the population. You're showing a church attendance of 30% of this country, and you're going to say that that's going to be the unifying religious basis to make America great again. It's a ridiculous proposition. The government will have to rule by the power of the government at this stage, because of the fact that our religious sensibilities have been so degraded. Saffron Park for $15 says, thanks in advance. Well, thank you. I hope I gave you enough. I mean, look, I'm going to do more debates with those Babylon Bee conservative types, but it's always the same argument. It's always the same questions. They never have answers for it. I've done this debate twice with Local Distance, once with Neil Shenby, once with Joel Berry. It's the same set of questions every single time. It's the same show. It's literally the same channel, Benjamin Boyce. And they never have answers for our contentions. They just stare at the camera and try to reframe away from the contention or try to say that the problem doesn't exist. They try to pretend like America is as Christian now as it was in the 1950s. And even in the 1950s, it wasn't Christian enough to hold off the 1960s. Or they try to say that there's going to be some kind of magic revival that will restore the Constitution. No evidence for any of this. And the audience doesn't believe it. Or they also float these things like, well, Nigerians can be just as America as Americans because there are super American Nigerians that we selected out of the population because our immigration system prioritizes high IQ doctors over your median Nigerian immigrant. And because of this, they've psyoped themselves into making the same mistakes as progressives have. And, I don't know, like I can walk these people, like it's like, was it Brylan Hollyhands? I can walk like he was with legal immigration is fine as long as they assimilate. I can walk you through why this is a bad argument. So could ChatGPT. It is a very finite set of questions. The questions never change. You never have answers for them. Do you need me to explain why your answers don't work? I mean, I have done that multiple times, and their solution to that is to change the topic or to propose some kind of future event that will make the things that we're seeing on the ground disapparate in an instant. Like, wave a magic wand at modernity and it will go away. Wave a magic wand at mass native atheism and it will go away. Well, it's not going to go away. So, I mean, the conversation is more or less over. I mean, we'll have it again for the next 10 years. Really, Aaron is better at me at this better than me in this conversation. He's more culturally aligned with people like Joel Berry. He can speak to the boomers or the red state boomers better than I can. So because of that, he's more the spearhead for this particular avenue. Isaac Young for $5 USA. Out of curiosity, what's the most recent best media you've enjoyed? Well, that would be obviously Jim Henson's The Storyteller. I'm rereading Blood Meridian. That was pretty good. What else did I? I'm racking my brain. I read Faust over the summer by Goethe. It was pretty good. I'm drawing a blank on other ones. I liked Dune because it was a concept art movie of the story. What's the most modern thing that really inspired you? People are not going to like this answer. So I did see a movie that was passable called Weapons, which was, maybe I'll do a little review on this one. So Weapons, good movie. I'd recommend seeing it. It's a good movie. It's by one of the people from the comedy troupe called The Whitest Kids You Know, which were brilliant. I think they might still be working together, but the lead guy, Trevor Moore, died under mysterious circumstances. So, it's like the Grateful Dead after the death of Jerry Garcia. Like, they're still together, but how together can you be when your lead singer is dead? They're all really brilliant comedians, and one of the other guys directed Weapons, and it is. And I was expecting more like a straight psychological horror movie with a supernatural twist, which it was. What I wasn't expecting was how many comedic elements would be woven into it, which I guess, given that it was the Whitest Kid You Know comedy troupe who directed it, or one of the guys, I should have expected that. Weapons is really, though, the problem with it is it's just a worse version of Twin Peaks. It is almost identical to Twin Peaks, except it makes more mistakes. I mean, it gets a lot of it recaptures some of the magic of Twin Peaks, which, for that reason, it is a good movie and I'd recommend it. But I can't think of a single way in which Weapons was better than Twin Peaks. It was just a strict. If you have the option of watching Weapons or Twin Peaks, just watch Twin Peaks, right? Because it's very, very, very similar story. I would say that of the movies that I saw that really inspired me, Godzilla Minus One was a good movie insofar that I thought it was a classic movie. And it really showed that it was possible to make a classic, wholesome monster movie as long as you didn't have to go through Hollywood. And, uh, I had a few quibbles with it, but other than that, it was just chef's kiss, great popcorn movie. It felt like Hollywood again. It felt like I could go to the movies and see a story that really made me feel good, and it wasn't super artistic or anything else like that. And the other one I really felt inspired by was Beau is Afraid by Ari Aster. Now, this movie, how should I put this? My audience, if you're in my audience, you'll probably hate that movie. And even with Ari Aster films, there are probably ones that are strictly better, like Hereditary. But I loved Beau is Afraid because it's a variation on a trope or a style of stories that I don't see very often, but that if people did them, they would be highly, highly relevant. And that is the Kafka story. Now, Beau is Afraid, it's incredibly Jewish, which is good. I like Jewish stuff when it's explicitly Jewish. Like it says, this is a Jewish story on the tin, and you get a Jewish story, and it's a perfect Jewish story, and it perfectly captures a sincere emotion of the artist, and it's just perfect. My one complaint about Beau is Afraid is that it's way, 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 way too long. They could have cut half that movie, and it would have been twice as good. It's way too packed. But other than that, I really, really thought it was a phenomenal. It recaptured something in filmmaking that I remember feeling in the 90s that I haven't seen for a very long time, which is, a movie that is going somewhere, but that you have no idea where it's going, even though you kind of do. And I remember feeling that way all the time when watching those old Miramax indie movies from the 90s. And, I re-experienced that with Beau is Afraid. You have to like Kafka style stories. You have to like kind of Jewish themed stories too. And so if that's not your cup of tea, probably not the film for you. I do like both of those things, so it was awesome. And even though I'm not Jewish, or not, not by any significant amount, I guess. Isaac Young for $5 USA. What do you think is the fiction genre that is going to break out of stuck culture? Well, I mean, there already is one. The fiction genre that is broken out of stuff that never got stuck. There are genres that are not stuck, and the genre that is not stuck right now is horror. Horror movies, they're making horror movies today that are still, I mean, not every year, but every other year, you get a really good, passable horror movie. That was kind of rare in the 90s. You didn't get super good horror movies all the time. Now, a lot of times, like the Roger Eggers thing, they're missing components. They don't have, like, the soul's not quite there. But horror is, our culture understands that we need punishment and that terrors lurk beyond our vision. And so that is a genre that will that you can just operate in right now. You could write like, what is the best author? And I mean, I don't want Isaac Young, you're a great author. I do appreciate that. Just want to say that. But if we're talking about more established people of an older generation that are in our sphere specifically, who is the big fish? It's Zero H.P. Lovecraft. What does he write? Existential horror novels that take place in postmodernity. That's what works. Like, that's the spiritual expression of our time. Fiction genres that will break out. Well, look, going to demand again, I would say that dark fairy tales, because they're a genre of horror, is probably something that is an easy breakout. There's also a demand for fairy tales that you don't see there's a demand for fairy tales because people in my position, like parents, millennial parents, are way, way, way more right wing than millennial culture producers, which are way, way, way more left wing. And that means that there is a demand for right of center children's entertainment. And if you can fill that genre tastefully and in a way that does not insult the intelligence of parents, something like Miyazaki, there's going to be an instant demand for that, and it will be not stuck because it will sincerely fulfill a purpose. I think the hardest thing, I think the genres that will likely not get unstuck. Adventure, very hard to get unstuck. Modern people don't believe in adventure, and so to talk about adventure stories inside a realistic context, modern people's brains will rebel against that. And maybe if you highly stylize it, if you make something like The Pilgrim's Progress, people will be more able to kind of integrate that into their lives more organically. So adventure is really hard, going to be hard to do. Not to dissuade you, science fiction is going to have a hard time coming unstuck. People don't feel like they have a future. That is the overwhelming. Science fiction as a genre came into itself in the 50s and 60s, where people felt like they own the future. This is our future. We're boldly going into it. People don't feel that way about the future anymore. So, classic science fiction is very hard to do. Now, you could do a trick. You could kind of like do a sci-fi fantasy combination, which I think you might be doing. I haven't, I have this policy where I only read long form books when I know they're done. So, no, what I've read of yours, Isaac, I've really liked. So, by all means, please continue. I'll read it when it's done. But, you probably could mix like Dune style sci-fi fantasy to make it complete. But like Golden Age sci-fi is totally stuck. Superheroes is beyond stuck, but you didn't need me to tell you that, right? Superheroes is beyond stuck. Detective mystery fiction. You could probably do a period piece mystery fiction like John Slaughter, and that would hold up. But modern detective stuff is totally stuck. You couldn't do that. One thing though, we're going to go into a winter period of culture. That's just inevitable. The first things that are going to kind of where the sprouts are going to come are in short stories, are in poems, are in very small things like short and sweet and communicating very blithely and to the point. That's where the green sprouts are going to spring up. And I know I don't want to discourage Isaac from you writing your epic, but while you're writing your epic, if you could create kind of a few punchy short stories. Now, I know what you're going to say, because all writers say it. There's no point in writing short stories in the modern world. Nobody reads them. And you're right. In the 90s and 2000s and 2010s, and no one read short stories, and no one read poetry. Like, don't bother writing that stuff. No one reads it. What I'm telling you, and this is a guess, this is a projection, I think that's going to change. I think that as culture kind of reaches the absolute low point, people are going to be looking for these like little vignettes, these little pieces of culture that are 100% good and wholesome, but are much shorter and much more meaningful. But thank you, and hopefully that helps. Sam 153. There we are. You missed the chance to observe Canadian Thanksgiving this week. Dave, cheers. Oh yeah, I was totally swamped. Wait, I guess you're right. It is Canadian Thanksgiving. We totally missed that celebration. Well, we were beyond busy this last weekend. We went to a harvest festival. We went to, I don't know, maybe I'm not doxing myself. We went to Apple Hill in Placerville, California. This is something that I remember loving when I was a kid. Go to Apple Hill. Every year we go to Apple Hill, Apple Hill, Apple Hill. It was okay. I mean, it was good. It was super wholesome, I felt. I felt that it was a little bit too crowded. There was like, I was expecting it to be kind of like a harvest festival. Instead, it was like, people were like lining up around, around the whole highway to come visit this like cluster of farms near Placerville. But it's an Apple Festival. If America looked like Apple Hill Festival in 2025, we wouldn't be that far gone. Like everyone had kids there. Uh, most of the people who weren't white were married to white people, right? There wasn't that much. There was an acceptable amount of diversity, right? It was well integrated. Everyone felt like they were on the same page morally, even though that obviously wasn't true. Obviously, there were tons of progressives there and tons of conservative Christians, but no one was running progress flags around. The Christian symbolism was implicit but present on the conservatives there. You didn't have the progressives do like F Trump anti-ICE protests, although I think I saw a little bit of that, but it was on the periphery. Everything felt kind of like the 90s, and I really, really appreciated that. But I guess we did that for Canadian Thanksgiving. Ben White for $3 USA. The man who I super chatted about earlier, it was Matt Christman. I found it vile that instead of reflecting on one's own mortality, he chose to curse those who he saw as his enemies. Well, Matt Christman, about 2 years ago, he had this massive stroke or some kind. I don't personally, guys, I don't think it was a stroke. I think he OD'd on drugs. But apparently he survived and he made a complete recovery or a partial recovery well enough to go back to podcasting. Or at least part of it. I don't think he's full-time anymore on Chapo Trap House. But he I originally talked about him because he was the first one of the progressive influencers who was like, I want to unironically kill them all. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And he was talking about Ross Douthat of all people. Like, of all the people you'd want to kill from the bottom of your heart, like Ross Douthat, that's the kind of like people who disappoint themselves even in their revenge fantasies, right? Like, I'm gonna kill Ross Douthat. Like, what Ross Douthat? Like, is my ambition as a right winger to kill Ezra Klein? Like, I am revenge underachiever. Of all things, like he had this rant about conservatives that was like homicidal. And this was just after Biden defeated Trump. So there wasn't even really a reason for it. But this is the thing with like Freddie DeBoer and Matt Christman is that they're now dads. And so that they're seeing things and they're having concerns that other conservatives have. And through the perspective of being a parent, a father in particular, I don't think it is as easy to be this snarky, druggy irony bro that talks about wanting to murder his political opponents because it's a big gag. I think that kind of doesn't hit the same way. And so of all people who I've kind of looked for a reform, well, Freddie DeBoer is probably at the top of the list, but Matt Christman might not be too far after. I mean, what does fatherhood do to a progressive communist? A rich progressive communist at that. Doesn't he imagine that most other middle Americans want to preserve their wealth and their posterity like he obviously does for his own child? Thank you, though, Ben White. Sex Freakman for $3 USA. Thanks. I mean, pagans are a vague placeholder for right-wing adversaries to Christianity. It's not about debating them so much as understanding exactly where we went wrong, beyond not believing enough, which is true. Well, I mean, the problem is that I can't point to bad decisions. I mean, I can point to like, we should have done this in the 20s, or we should have done that in the 30s, or we should have done that in the 60s, or William F. Buckley should have done this or that. When we're talking about civilizational crises that evolve over the course of 5 generations, you're not going to come up with one thing that went wrong because everyone on the previous stages are reacting to a different set of historic circumstances. Like, for instance, 20 years from now, if everything goes right, there's probably going to be a highly mobilized right wing with a lot of young guys in it and a lot of young families. And we're not going to have boomers, and we're not going to have or boom spiritual boomers. Probably the boomers will obviously be passed away by that point, unless there are some that are pushing 110 or something like that. And the boomers will be gone. The neocons will be gone. The Joel Berry types will be gone. They won't be dead, but they'll come around to see things our way. And when we're in that position, right wingers who are 20, when I'm like in my 60s or 70s, will come around and say, well, when you were in the 2010s, why didn't you just take power? Why didn't you just push all the way? America was 70% white. It was 30% Christian. It was nominally 80% Christian. You could have taken the whole country. You had things so much easier than we did. Why didn't you just take over everything in 2012? And they won't be able to see that, like, all of that strength that they saw in the demographics, it was all illusionary. The second that there was a hard push, it would have immediately been subverted by the leadership. And it would have been basically akin to committing suicide. The infrastructure that they will have in the future in terms of organization will be greater even as their demographic position is weakened. And so they'll go and they'll say to us, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z when X, Y, and Z were impossible in the circumstances? You can expect that. And so, when you're talking about mistakes that were made across the generations, for instance, William F. Buckley, I think there's a number of things that he could have done differently. But I frankly, to be honest, it's a good question whether those things would have been possible or not. Some things, like when it gets to the 90s, you can see people making mistakes that you can be fairly certain are just straight up like dumb mistakes. Like there's no reason to do that other than you were just cowardly and you didn't want to stick by your guns. But in 1950, 1960, when people are not established and I don't even understand the cultural dynamic, a lot of things that seem like good moves to us now might not have been possible. These are organic systems. So you can say Western civilization declined because people stopped believing in God. That's what Spengler says, and that is a true statement. What could be done individually to hold it off relies on a bunch of people across the 20th centuries all doing the right thing at the right time and staying on the right side of a bunch of random circumstances that could have easily gone the wrong way and gotten them killed. It's imponderable to ask from a managerial perspective what could have been done differently. I can tell you what people would have done as a society that would have been different if they had everyone in the ruling class on board. But I can't tell you what individual actors that were conservative could have done to prevent this. And, that is one of the great, we can talk about bad ideas. We can talk about bad trends. We can talk about the lack of religiosity. We can talk about the feminization of society. And all of those are bad trends. But linking those to individual decisions about what was done and what was not done, nearly impossible, which is why the question is not particularly well posed, in my opinion. Aloe Vera for $25 USA. Do you think that movies, novels, culture from mainland China will become bigger in the West, like Japanese culture and J-pop, K-pop have become big? I imagine that, I want to be blunt here. China has been much, much, much less creative than Japan and Korea has over the last 30 years. And their excuse of being poor is no longer an excuse that I really buy. I'm beginning to think that Chinese culture is much more conformist, even than its other scenic civilization equivalents in Japan or Korea. And their birth rate problem is just as bad. Where was I? I lost my train of thought. So, I don't know. I think that because China is obviously going to be a rival superpower, if not the superpower after America, the idea that they won't make culture is nuts. They obviously will have Chinese pop culture that becomes big over here at some point. But China is also an aging population. They don't have the young people to produce this culture. So unless something amazing happens with generative AI, in which case is it really Chinese to begin with, it seems like they're kind of missing their window for creativity as we speak. They're going to get old before they get creative. And it might be just the case that for whatever historic circumstances, China of the 20th and 21st century just was never capable of becoming creative in the same way that Japan was so creative, and that for a hot moment, Korea was as well. So I have my sincere doubts that will ever be a big thing. Okay, last super chat over the night before I close. On Psalm 5. But last super chat of the night, I guess I could. Well, someone wants to send me another one. I would not read it. But Absolute Defender for $3 says, "Are you aware of Todd Lewis's critique of the reactionary right?" It would help if I selected this. Are you aware of Todd Lewis's critique of the reactionary right? His critique is basically that reaction couldn't beat the left in the past, and so it's silly to believe that they'll beat them now. Fine. I mean, okay, first of all, one thing about Todd. Todd and I go way back to 2016. There are a few people that I've known for longer than Todd Lewis. Great guy, great content creator, subscribe to his stuff. However, I can basically time my watch on these periodic critiques of the reactionary right that I get from Todd Lewis. Every 1 to 2 years, Todd comes out with a big critique of the dissident right, or Mencius Moldbug, or Nick Land, or whatever. And, we do a live stream, we talk about it for an hour, and then I list my answers, and then it resets. And, I think Todd's concerns are he's pointing out genuine problems with the distant right or the neo-reaction or Curtis Yarvin. A lot of his complaints are valid, but they're view from nowhere complaints. They're complaints that almost everyone, you can apply to almost everybody who's not progressive in the modern world, like this one is. And secondly, like they have answers to them, right? They have answers to them. And the answers are, while they don't completely solve the problem, the objections Todd brings are not unknown to people in the distant right or the neo-reactionary movement. And so, like, the way that Todd Lewis presents his critiques, like, this is the critique that's going to take the dissident right down, and it's been something that we've been talking about for 10 years. Or I mean, it's original. He adds his own spin to it, but it's a variation of a problem that right-wingers have been talking about for the last 10 years. So, these critiques by Todd Lewis are periodic, they're expected, they're in good faith. I'm sure I'll talk to him about it. I like Todd as a content creator, but I'm not blown away by these things, because in 2 years, there's going to be another devastating critique of the right wing that Todd is going to advance. And it's going to be, I hate to say, it's going to be a slight variation with some modification of critiques that have already been made. And it's also going to apply not just to the dissident right, but pretty much all non-progressive political movements. Is the solution to that just to not have non-progressive political movements? I would say I think that the answer to that is no. The solution is to keep building, to keep organizing, to keep making your own plans, and to go forward with those things. So that being said, let's read our psalm, because my voice is out. Thank you for joining me for this Ask Me Anything stream. I did pretty well in terms of viewership, but it is getting too late for people. So let us read. I thought I was going to read Psalm 5, not Psalm 3. But Psalm 5 says, "Give ears to my words, O Lord, consider my meditation. Hearken unto the voice of my cry, my King and my God. For unto thee will I pray. My voice shall bear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee, and will look up. For thou art not a God that has pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell within thee. The foolish shall not stand in thy sight. Thou hatest all workers of iniquity. Thou shalt destroy them in speaking. Thou shalt destroy them, speak leasing. The Lord will abhor the bloody and the deceitful man. But as for me, I will come into thy house in the multitude of thine mercy, and in thy fear I will worship towards thy temple. Lead me, O God, in thy righteousness, because of mine enemies make thy way straight before me. For there is no faithfulness in their mouths. Their inward part is wickedness. Their throat is open to the sepulchre. They flatter with their tongue. Destroy thou them, God. Let them fall by their own counsel. Cast them into the multitude of their transgressions, for they have rebelled against thee. But let all those who put their trust in thee rejoice. Let them ever shout for joy, because thou defendest them. Let them that also love thy name be joyful in thee. For thou, Lord, with blessed the righteous, for thou, Lord, with bless the righteous, with favor wilt thou compass with him be a shield. All right, guys, thank you for joining me for this Ask Me Anything. I will see you next week for an actual live stream, an actual Fiddler's Green podcast. But until then, have